Hey, good evening and welcome to the Gin&Tonic show on 25th of Jan 2019. And a very warm welcome and good evening to all the viewers and, of course, to my co-panelists, Stop Spamming and Thunderous. Good evening, guys.
Hi.
Hello, guys.
So, welcome to part 4. I'm not sure if we're going to get through all 30 verses. I think there are, when I have a quick look here, we're on verse 58 and we've got to get to 88. So we'll see how far we get tonight. But before we start, we've got a few crazy comments, not too many. Maybe that's a good thing or a bad thing, depending on what sort of viewer you are. But we were just chatting before.
But the same thing again. And I promise I will not scream. I'm not going to tear my hair out. No, I'm just getting very frustrated with the state of affairs where I am somebody, if I want to say anything about Islam, if I want to get an opinion on Islam, if I want to go into the discussion, or if I want to say anything about Islam, I go and study, learn, read, ask experts, read up and do all sorts of things. So I put a minimum, just a little bit of effort into this, just to scratch the surface, just to learn a little bit about this. And then I learn and go along and learn as I go along. Okay, cool. What I hear from Muslims, though, is the same tired, stupid, ridiculous arguments over and over and over. They've been debunked, refuted, ridiculed. They've been handled over and over again. And yet all they go and do and say, please, Zakir Naik, tell me about the mountains. Now, we've done this. We've shown that this is wrong. And yet they do it again and again, year in, year, every couple of months. You get some idiot who says the same thing without being able to just a little bit scratch the surface and understand what they are talking about and know that what they are talking is absolute nonsense, that they're only going to get laughed at. And they don't care. They will embarrass themselves over and over and still declare victory because they said, well, I know that I am right because my God is there and my God said it in the Quran and that's why it's right. It's not. So, this is what I find a little bit unnerving after, having this and after looking at, have I made a mistake? I mean, if I go and look at something, I always check, have I done this right? And I ask others for opinions. Please correct me. Please look over this. Make sure that I don't do something wrong. And then I get idiots who come here and they will repeat, remember Nadia Ahmed? We had him on the Gin&Tonic show. We told him that he's wrong. I made a video about this, showed him he's wrong. He challenged me on this. I explained it to him, showed him where he's wrong, provided him with the evidence. And then 4 or 5 years later, he comes here on the Gin&Tonic show and says the same identical nonsense. And that's where I get frustrated. I think, why are people doing that? He knows he is wrong. He knows he's being dishonest. He knows that what he is saying is not the truth. And yet he will come on here on the same Gin&Tonic show and say the same thing. And I think to myself, why am I doing this? What impact am I actually having when I get maybe, 6, 7, 8, maybe even 10 people a year who come back to me and say, look, you helped me leave Islam. Okay, big deal. It's just, that's nothing. All Muslims should be able to go, even if they are indoctrinated. And Rob is quite right, because he told me, look, this is the basis for them is obey. Sure, but we're in the 21st century. And yes, there are millions and millions of Muslims leaving exactly because of that. But I think, why aren't all? They should realize by now that they can't come with these arguments. So if somebody bases their belief, their entire trust in the Quran on science, that can't happen. That can't be. It's absolutely impossible. That's why I'm frustrated. I'm thinking, no, come on. It's time people stop this.
Yeah, I mean, I pointed out to Stops before the show started that, there'll be new Muslims or Muslims that haven't spoken to us or to other people that will come with the claims because they're not taught to go and critique these or to research these. They're taught, hey, here's the answer. If the Imam or the Sheikh says it, it must be true. Why would you question something that you already believe to be true? There's no reason in their mind to do this. So I think maybe, the frustration, while it's there, should be controlled a little bit with new ones. I think there's a legitimate frustration with somebody where you have shown them, as you've pointed out, Stops. That's the sort of person where there's a legitimate frustration. Either they don't understand science or don't want to understand it, so willfully ignorant, or just ignore it, in which case, yeah, I agree with you. But it's a different mindset. And, as long as we're doing this, as long as these arguments are out there, you've been doing this for 10 years. So if you repeated yourself multiple times and you're still doing it, so, a pat on the back, who knows whether I'll be doing it in 10 years or Thunderous or anybody else for that matter. But that's part of the, it's part of the role, so to speak, to do that. But Thunderous was saying something as well. So Thunderous, do you want to just repeat what you were saying with regards to just people in general?
I think when you're considering religion and people's thinking, it's very much like nationalism, in a nationalistic mindset that this is what I am, and I cannot change. Like if you're born English, oh, I am English and I'm an Englishman through and through, or I'm a German through and through and such. And very much religion has that mindset as well, or it's created this mindset in people where that is what they're in, that is what they're born into, this is what they are. And anything that comes along and challenges that stand is rebuffed and not investigated. And I find that this is more so the case now than it ever was within religion, that and certain scientific fields as well. That if that's what you've been born into, anything that comes along and prejudices that, there isn't any inquiry. And for me, more so, it's quite alarming that nobody wants to question it with a critical point of view in order to change their thinking, because you would think that if whatever you believe, there's only one truth. Whatever the truth is, there's only one truth from the way I see things. So it doesn't make sense to not challenge or even to inquire critically what it is that's been proposed as an alternative to whatever stand that you're on. Because you see, what will happen there is you'd have to start cogitating, meditating and thinking it through as to why you accept a new truth or why you don't. And that can only lead to an improved human being, which is something that nobody seems to want to be, particularly in the religion of Islam. It's like any critical inquiries is not allowed, and yet you would think it would be allowed, because if anything else, whether you accept the new, if you like, understanding of something or correction, you have to understand as to why you accepted it. It's a bit like exercising your muscles. If you exercise and you improve your body, if you exercise your brain with critical thinking, you improve your thinking power and your intellectual prowess. I find that seems to be very close-minded in this day and age, and that's alarming, because it's leading to the world that it is now, and it's certainly not what it was when I left Islam. Now, you made a comment there about Stops has been doing this for 10 years, and I certainly know of him being doing it for about 6 or 7 myself, though we've never really interacted until the past couple of years. But I've been doing this, if you like, before the advent of the new mediums of the internet for about 35 years, though on a one-to-one basis, in the casual basis as I was growing up in life. So I've seen where once upon a time where you'd be able to have a conversation with somebody, though my knowledge at the time was a little limited because access to information was limited. It's not as abundant as it is now through the mediums that we have. But now you would think with the access to more information, the opposite has happened. People's minds have become a lot more closed and sealed off.
Yeah, it is an interesting dichotomy, isn't it? You have more information, but you've got to wade through, what's true and what isn't. And maybe that intellectual pursuit of weighing up and looking through things is tiring for people. So it is a dichotomous position of having more information at your fingertips, and yet people, take flat Earth, for example, these people being anti-scientific and coming up with all kinds of nonsense as an example. You wouldn't think that would be in the 21st century, but,
But I would look at that, and I would encourage other people to look at flat Earth, not because I believe it, because I don't, but I would challenge other people to look at it, for them then to meditate on the information provided to see why they will accept it or why they won't accept it. Because if you're going to accept something or not accept something, a thinking process has to go in place with your mind. Why you accept something, why you don't accept something. that can only lead to an improved human being, because when they make their stand against the argument, again, if it's proposed to them, they can then have their own formulated argument as to why they do and don't accept something. The problem we have now, just to conclude my point, is that what's happened is that this new generation of people are around now, and the advent of the internet, gatekeepers have been set up to stop access to information. So even though you have access to information, let's say the religion of Islam, the scholars have become the gatekeepers to information, and the religious followers of Islam now rely not on their own understanding or their own investigation. They're relying on the investigation that these scholars for dollars have done for them on their behalf, almost like a shortcut. And as a result of that shortcut, the scholars for dollars have thus reduced themselves as gatekeepers of information that, if you like, pens in the thinking critical ability of human beings that are claiming to be Muslim.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Good. On that note, let's do a few crazy comments. Stops, did you want to say something?
No.
Oh, okay. It sounded like you were.
I shiver in anticipation.
All right, let's do a few crazy comments. Why not? And then we'll get into the verses. Let me share this and present it to everybody. Hopefully you can see it. If not, make it bigger on your screen, but I'll read it out anyway. And so this was a crazy comment on the video with Jamie. So over here it's Adnan not challenging Jamie on the inheritance error, doing everything but challenge him on the inheritance error. But here, this particular, presumably he's a Muslim, takes a different view. Height of dishonesty and insincerity by Jamie guy. These atheists really need help. If you are so sure God doesn't exist, that God does not exist, then why the hell are you debating about it? Go to some bar and enjoy your remaining life in the shit you like. Why waste time and effort on something that doesn't even exist according to your belief? But these atheists have some internal feelings that God exists, and they just want to debate, shout, cry, deny, find faults, and laugh at others, just to pacify their internal fear and console themselves. Just closing your eyes like pigeon is not going to help you, bros. Your time is running out. TikTok. Well, obviously, somebody had to get it off their chest. But this whole story, I mean, you've obviously heard it a million times, Stops, and so have I. You know, why do you guys, talk about this when you don't believe in God? Well, because you guys, the Muslims or Islam, keeps talking about it. If you stop talking about it, so would we. If you didn't have an impact in our society, and it was like this quiet thing that you kept to the family table at dinner, then we probably wouldn't be talking about it. But that's the reason why. So there we go. But obviously this fella felt like there was insincerity and dishonesty. And of course, it was exactly the opposite. Jamie brought an honest thing, and his interlocutor, in this case, Adnan Rashid, did everything except actually engage in the critique that was brought forward. I encourage you to watch that video. It's one on Speaker's Corner. There's the picture of it there. You'll see Adnan's hand out, and he's sort of challenging Jamie, but not on the claims that Jamie's bringing. So there we go. Stops, this was your one. Maybe you can read it and share where did this come from?
I don't know if I can. Am so happy because Allah created hell, Jahannam. So you who always insulted Islam, you can do as much as you can, but remember, with the death and punishment, you cannot run from it.
Oh, so this was, Go to Hell was the title of this thing. And this obviously for some of these Muslims is a big thing, isn't it? This death and punishment is what keeps them in the fold. Because if you didn't have some sort of negative consequence for leaving, a lot more people would have left, a lot longer ago. So
wasn't that a comment back when Muhammad died, one of the caliphs after Muhammad died? If there wasn't a punishment for apostasy, Islam would have disbanded as soon as Muhammad died.
Oh, is there? I'm not aware of one. If you can find one, I mean, that wouldn't surprise me.
I can, I'll certainly have a look for it. If I can look, I'll try and look at it during the show. If not, I'll certainly have it ready for next. I remember distinctly reading that if there wasn't the rule of death for apostasy, because the first war after Muhammad died was the war of apostasy, if I remember correctly. But I remember. I'll let you carry on. I'll have a look for it.
Yeah, no, that'll be great. And
I'm
we've
just
got our,
reading in the chat here, Abdul
yes.
Lubda again. I don't know. Why don't you grow up, really? I swear, he swears. Can you believe it? He swears that these ex-Muslims are just a trend of rebellious, immature teenagers who attention seek.
Oh, maybe he's trying.
Oh,
Maybe he's trying the Yoda approach there of speaking speaking
but this
poor
is
poor
like,
English.
self-masturbation in the mind. That's all it is. It's just whistling in the woods. No, these ex-Muslims are very, very real. The ex-Muslims are getting more and more and more. And the more ex-Muslims you have, the more other people will realize that there is a way out of Islam. And the more ex-Muslims you have who lead perfectly normal, happy lives are there to show others that there is a way past all this jibber jabber and all this nonsense that you get. And then people start developing critical thinking skills. And they look at the Quran and they find that nothing is correct in the Quran. And suddenly they are allowed, and this is the most important thing, they are allowed to say critical things and to think critical thoughts. And that's when it starts. And this is why ex-Muslims, I love them to bits if they are getting vocal, if they are able to say, this is what happened to me. Look, you can live without Islam. That is why you are so afraid of ex-Muslims. That's why you're writing nonsense like this. But it doesn't work like this. Believe you me, ex-Muslims are really the triggers for many, many others.
Yeah, and
The
they
irony, sorry, can I just before I forget my thought, the irony with that is to become a Muslim, all you have to do is say the Shahada. It's just as simple as that to become a Muslim. However, if you're a Muslim who then decides to leave Islam, all you get, and you've probably had this experience on the show when people try to challenge me, can you recite Surah Fatiha? Can you do this? Did you do that? Did you read it like this? Did you, the loops you got to jump through, the hoops you got to jump through just to prove that you're an ex-Muslim seem to be far greater than it is to become a Muslim in the first place. And I don't understand that logic either. So to be a Muslim, all I've got to do is say the Shahada. To be an ex-Muslim, I've got to recite the Quran backwards in the Arabic alphabet. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, no, I had a conversation with somebody on Discord sometime this week. I just happened to pop on for a while, and I asked him basically the same thing. I asked him, what is the minimum requirement to be a Muslim? And initially he said it was accepting God as a Unitarian God and Muhammad as the last messenger. And I said, well, what about Shahada? Is that not something? Can you be a Muslim and not take Shahada? At first he argued that yes, you could, and eventually came around to it because he seemed to be confused between a requirement and a guideline. And eventually we got to the point that you had to have the Shahada as well, because obviously I was going down this route of, okay, so what is it that you need to do? And then I obviously asked him, because he put into the comments as well something similar to what you mentioned there, Thunderous. You need to have a depth of knowledge to critique or to leave Islam. And I said, well, okay, if that's the route you're going to go, then are you going to be consistent? Suggest that before people convert in, they need a depth of knowledge as well. And at this point, of course, then it became an inconsistent sort of back and forth that didn't really get anywhere. But you're absolutely right. You either got to be consistent, and they can just take the Shahada without actually having read anything because they like X, Y, and Z, but have never read the Quran, or they can't. And if they can go in so easily, then you can transition out just as easily. But in the chat there, Detective Inspector Monkfish says, stops, you're a fake ex-Shia.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, of course, Abdul is saying there that brother tortoise is right. You all leave for intellectual, not for, you all didn't leave for intellectual reason, but emotional. I mean, there might be some ex-Muslims that did that, but many of the ones that I've spoken to personally don't do that, and they've explained their reasons. So again, he can make whatever claims he wants. I mean, it's demonstrably false if you speak to some of them. But again,
but bring tortoise here. Let's talk about it. Bring him on the show. Let's talk.
Obviously, he's not going to come here.
And also, when you think about it, you get a more stimulating intellectual dialogue with someone who explains his reasons for leaving Islam, as opposed to somebody whose reasons as to why he still claims to be a Muslim. You get very little from the person who can explain as to why he is a Muslim, but you get a better description or an explanation from a person as to why he's not a Muslim. And 10 out of 10 times, the person who gives the reasons for being an ex-Muslim has 100% more knowledge than the person who claims as to why he claims to still be a Muslim.
Yeah, many of the converts. I mean, I've invited Jordan M. He's the English convert that goes down to Speaker's Corner, who's buddies with Hamza, Darren Hamza, Redbeard Hamza. I've invited him multiple times. He's of the view, without really watching the show or coming on to have the conversation, that our intent is not a good one by some osmosis reason. So he's reluctant to come on the show. Yeah, I think it's more likely he's reluctant to come on because I want to ask him what were the reasons, and let's see, how strong those reasons are, and does he actually know much about Islam, or has he been given, the how can you put it, the bells and whistles version from his buddy Hamza, and not any of these things. I don't expect him to be able to answer all of the things that we would put to him, but certainly for him to go away and evaluate, because I think he's been given the sugar-coated version was the word I was looking for. And I want to understand the reasons. Why did he convert? But somebody posted a video. If you're listening and you've got that video, I think it was Sir Macintosh, or somebody posted. So if you're a viewer and you know of the video where this guy Jordan M talks about why he converted in, then do let us know. Cool. On that note, let's move on to, we've only got a few comments, so let's do the next one, which is also one of your stops. Do you remember where this came from?
What was the title I gave it?
This is Amos Yee reaction.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Amos Yee is a guy from Singapore who does satire. And he did a piece on the Qur'an, which was picked up by one of the biggest YouTubers who happens to be a Muslim. I forgot his name. Who said that Amos Yee should be put in jail or something for making fun of the Quran. But he's a satirist, okay? What do you expect? So I picked this up and I made a refutation video on the comment made by this Muslim and showed that the guy who was condemning Amos Yee was a total prick. And he was so obnoxious, so arrogant, so full of himself, just because he's got a couple of million subscribers, because he does prank videos. And, then he thinks he can go and the problem is that he told his followers to go and teach this Amos Yee a lesson. And this is where I get very angry. And this is why I said, listen, you prick, how dare you use your influence and go and just get somebody who does a piece of satire on something which deserves satire to go and incite violence to get your people into trouble by going. And Amos Yee got put into jail, okay? Because in Singapore, things like these are not put lightly. Anyway, so this is a comment, GLA Fights, who did not like what I said about this. You prick, where are you? I want to kill you. I don't care going to jail. You won't be alive if I see you. Now, I don't know if this is me or if this is Amos Yee. This I don't know.
Whichever one. I think it's clear what this fella thinks. Thank you for that, as always. All you have to do is go and I pop back to go and, because sometimes you read some of the comments. I've got some interesting ones with that Phil and Sabur debate. And again, I just happened to pick up one here because I was looking through Phil's comments, and I think Sabur's actually responded to some of them now in the text format. And this fella said, wow, Sabur just went over Phil's head. Phil does not understand a field he wants to talk about. Lol. Again, I just amused me that somebody could say that Sabur went over. Yes, he did. If you claim that he went over by not understanding himself or saying something that wasn't necessarily true, then yes, that went. But in terms of factual information, no, it didn't. And here was another one, I think, from the same thing. We also share good DNA with pigs, rats, fish, potatoes, etc. I can picture all the fish walking out of the water to eat the bananas. Oh dear. Oh dear. What can you say about this other than an education is required? I mean, the fact that you can actually write words says that you can understand English to some degree, but whether you can understand anything more than that is doubtful by that sentence. And that's it. So there we go. So not too many there. I'm sure we'll have plenty more in future. So with that said, is there any other comments there, Stops? I'm not following all of them. I'm looking at the other screen at the moment. If not, we'll go straight
No,
to...
not really. I mean, you said this because Abdul Buddha is a typical guy who says, yeah, it's been refuted. No, it hasn't. But it doesn't. Can I give people a pointer here? If you want to do the inheritance error, there is no need to, because there are so many errors in the Quran. To take one and point them out doesn't really help anymore. I suggest going the opposite way, going a different way, and simply saying, bring me something that is correct. And that is much more difficult, because then they need to think about what it is it says in the Quran. And that is what we're trying to do. We're trying to get people to think about what it says in the Quran. This is why my suggestion is ask what is correct, what is verifiably correct. In other words, they need to verify what it is they say. If they say, well, this thing with the mountains is correct, well, let them verify it. And this is how they start thinking about it. We had a guy who says, well, you know, the thing with the armies fighting in the nearest or lowest or whatever land, that is correct. Well, tell me how to verify it. And then go ahead and verify it, and then see what you can make of it. And you will find that they cannot do it. And this is a much better way to get them to think about what the Quran says, because that means they will go back to their imam and ask this question, the same identical question, in a larger group. And then you have this effect that then people say, hang on, why is the brother asking this question? And why is the imam unable to answer this? Or why does he suddenly sound like he's waffling? And this is how we get people to get doubt and get them to think about it. That's just my 2 cents on this, my suggestion.
Yeah, we can try it again. When we did it in the only concern I have with that is when we tested it in Speaker's Corner, and I went down there last year, and you were sort of chatting in my ear. It just leaves the field open for them to bring any claim, and I can't remember what the claim was, or at least one of them that was in Speaker's Corner when we went that route, and then it required a lot of nuance for you to kind of refute it, and I just felt like we had ceded too much ground to them, giving them the open field, so to speak, and then they can just bring any basic claim and go, look, it's
no, we didn't. This is the problem. We didn't. What we did is say, okay, can you show me how we are made from water? And this is when the guy started waffling and started and because he didn't have any information on this and couldn't really investigate this. But if you go and you say, give me anything, and they then come back and say, well, we are made from water, that is correct, then you don't need to do anything. You just need to sit there and wait for them to bring you the evidence.
Yeah, well, which you won't get in Speaker's Corner anyway. They'll just make the claim.
And this is exactly why I'm trying to turn this around. Just ask them, can you show me something in the Quran that is verifiably correct? And then you don't need to do anything. Because as soon as you say, well, there's an inheritance error, you get idiots like who go and they say, well, it's been refuted, and hijab says, well, I went to spoke to my elders and they told me blah, blah, blah. No, that doesn't help. Go and ask them, give me something that is correct. Change it, turn it around, and they need to do the thinking and the evidence gathering.
I think you need to, yeah, well, I mean, maybe you need to know a bit more on the Quran to do that. But again, maybe we can test it with somebody who comes on the show here. We'll test that out and see.
Yeah, that would be interesting, yeah. Well, I mean, we have Lubda there. Lubda, can you, or Abdul Lubda, can you show me something, anything, just one thing, with one single item that is correct, verifiably correct in the Quran? Bang, go.
There you go. So if you're a Muslim, there stops this challenge to you. Can you bring anything that is verifiably correct in the Quran? So we'll leave it there. If you can do that, then type it into the chat. We'll read it, and stops, you can respond to it. Cool. With that said, let's get on to the verses. We've got, depending on whether we can get through them all tonight, we've got quite a few. So let's present to everybody.
Why so religious? I'm sorry, but this is hilarious. He's so good. He isn't a Muslim. He really works for Act 17 apologetics.
Yeah, so maybe Maybe he's the devil's advocate or something.
Oh, that is so funny.
No, Abdul, that was not the question. It's not, can you show one thing that is incorrect? We've shown you one, like the inheritance, which you deny against all logic and reason. So you present to us one thing that you think is correct, and then we'll read it out and Stops can respond. Or maybe I will, or Thunderous will as well, depending on what it is. So, okay, but give us one thing. Don't just say everything in the Quran is divine revelation. Obviously, the rest of us don't believe that. So making a claim that you can't even substantiate with a particular example is not helpful. So we will await that. Okay, let's get on to the verses. If something comes up, we can always stop at some point. You said the last one you did on the last show when I didn't make it was verse 58, right?
Yeah.
I'll just read it here and then we'll carry on because obviously you've covered this. So the last verse from the previous show was, and how many populations we destroyed, which exulted in their life of ease and plenty. Now those habitations of theirs after them are deserted, all but a miserable few, and we are their heirs. Now again, without the context there, that is like absolute babble to me. So we'd have to, obviously, because I wasn't here at the last show, but I mean, what the hell does that mean?
The goodie of the week.
Sorry?
You in a chapter?
We didn't do the goodie of the week.
Oh, have you got it there?
Yes, I prepared myself just for once. That's why I'm so annoyed, because I went to prepare.
All right. So we haven't actually got on to the next verse. Stops wants to bring in the goodie of the week. Go ahead.
Have you got the right chapter just before we start? Because I think you got chapter 28 up. It's actually chapter 2.
Oh, sorry. Yes, thank you for. I thought it was supposed to be chapter 2. So thank you for that. And I thought there was 88. No, there's 286. So no, this definitely.
I'm reading along in my own Quran. I'm thinking, have I got the right chapter in?
No, thank you for that. It was supposed to be 2. So thank you for that.
And I wasn't looking at this. Okay, the goodie of the week is, and since we're doing this with the Quran, I started in Bukhari 1, book 1, number 1. So this is the very, very first hadith that Bukhari ever collected, and it's narrated by Umar bin al-Khattab. I heard Allah's apostle saying, the reward of deeds depend upon the intentions, and every person will get the reward according to what he has intended. So whoever migrated for worldly benefits or for a woman to marry, his immigration was for what he immigrated for. That's it. That's wonderful, isn't it? I don't really understand it, but it sounds wonderful.
I was going to say to you, I didn't really understand it, so I'm struggling to see how it's wonderful. But if you say so, I'll take your word for it.
Well, the first part, okay, every person will get the reward according to what he has intended. That's brilliant. Okay, so even if I do something wrong, if my intention was good, then I will get the reward. In other words, I don't know, we've explained the reward system. These are bonus points. This is like in Scientology or like a pyramid scheme, okay? So this is a cult where you get rewards, and you get the rewards of the guys that you get into the club, or things that you do that they do, then you get their points and blah, blah, blah. So you get the points according to what you intend. So if you go and you wave a woman into her parking space and help her to get parking, and she damages the car, then it was not your intention to get her to damage the car, but for you, your intention was to help her park her car. So you get the full reward for your intention of helping her to park her car. So this is good. The rest is then jibber jabber, but I don't know.
Okay, good.
So we stopped in 258, enter this town where we said, okay, it's crazy because you're going into a town, you're taking over the town, and then you just walk in and you eat whatever you want, you drink whatever you want. That's crazy.
Oh no, do we want to do the stops? He must be trolling. Stop spamming. Did you know that the Quran correctly says that the sun is in an orbit?
Okay. All right, great. This is all right. No, we're getting somewhere. Brilliant. Abdul Lubda, congratulations. You have just used your brain for the first time today. Super. Okay. Did I know that? No, I don't know that. Can you now verify this for us? Can you please demonstrate that the Quran says that the sun is in an orbit?
Can I just add on to that? Is that
Sure.
the orbit where the sun goes up to Allah and asks for permission to go around again?
Don't worry about that.
No,
It's
no, I
not
don't
for
think
us
so.
to do anything. I want Abdul Lubda to verify for us that the Quran correctly says that the sun is in an orbit.
And also, what specific orbit is it referring to?
Doesn't matter. Just give us the orbit. Show us that the sun is in an orbit. That's your claim. All right. You made a claim that the Quran says the sun is in an orbit. Go ahead and find for us where it says so.
Cool. Oh, there we've got Benny's joined us. Benny is a Muslim. He was on before.
Hi, Benny.
Do you guys remember?
Hello,
Yeah.
Hi.
good evening. Do you hear me?
Yes, we
Yep.
can hear you.
Okay, good.
Cool. All right, just in time. So there was 258. We're going to move on to 259 now. I'll read the Sahih International, and then we'll see if there's anything worthwhile saying here. But those who wronged changed those words to a statement other than that which had been said to them. So we went down upon those who wronged a punishment from the sky because they were defiantly disobeying. So every time I read this, I've got to reread it because it's just such bad English. So the translation, again, does one need to understand Arabic, or can you read it in an accurate translation? Even the corpus, which is the word for word translation up the top there.
I don't think the transliteration is going to work for you. I think, in my personal opinion, is the Yusuf Ali. It might make a little bit more sense if you use that version.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so there's Yusuf Ali. This is Sahih International, and the corpus there is the transliteration. But Yusuf Ali, but the transgressors changed the word from that which had been given them. So we
Hello?
sent. Are you there?
Yeah, you keep breaking off.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah. Given them, so we sent on the transgressors a plague from heaven, for that they infringed our command repeatedly. So I haven't seen the verses before this stops. Is this referring at all to Egypt?
No.
For the plague?
This is still talking to the Jews.
Mhm.
It says the wrong. Okay, I actually give up. Okay, I mean this is crazy. The wrongdoers among them is now the Jews, and some wrongdoer substituted something somewhere in some place, and then everybody gets the plague. So it doesn't say anything.
It's like he knows a story, but he hasn't got the whole story. He's got no names. He's got no time period. He doesn't know what the wrong is. He doesn't even know what the punishment is. It's just like a vague bunch of words. It's like bone. There's no meat on it. There's no fat on it. There's no spice. There's no taste. It's just bare bone, which is nothing.
And the thing is, why is it that this creator God creates humans, okay, and jinn, okay, but knowing full well what they will do? This God creates things knowing in advance that they will do something, that they will change something, or that they will substitute words, and then he's surprised at what they do, and then he needs to kill them by sending a plague down. Why not simply send a book on internet page or something like this, that you can't change? And if he or stop creating those humans who substitute the words, is that so difficult for a God?
And as Thunderous says there, the transgressors, again, if you wanted to make this clear, the transgressors, and what I mean, or however you want to phrase it, the Jews in this case, because obviously you know that, but just from reading this verse, you wouldn't necessarily, obviously I haven't read the previous verses, but presumably you should be able to read. That's why I say, I just expect so much more from a omniscient, omnipotent God, where every verse itself should be able to be read and perfectly understood. And if that's beyond the capability of this God, then either he's not all powerful or he doesn't want to send a clear message.
But it's also, if you look at it, says the transgressors, he doesn't name who the transgressors are. Then he goes on to say, change the word. Change what word to what word? Or what words were changed to what words? We should be.
From what word? Doesn't he have Control Z?
Say again?
Which words were changed? Doesn't he have Control Z?
Then
Control Z is undo. Control Z changes it back to what it was.
Then it goes on. We sent the transgressors a plague from heaven. There's nothing there. I failed to discern that this was written. It was beside Allah in heaven for billions of trillions of years in heaven, and what's the purpose of this verse? I mean, maybe Benny, as our guest Muslim, maybe Benny has an answer. Maybe he can help us.
Yes, I have. The scholars have understood it. Like, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, it sounds like you're driving or you're walking or something. I've just made you a bit louder, but there is some background noise there.
Okay, but you can hear me clearly, or is it too noisy?
I've made you a bit louder. Try again. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Look, God gave responsibility to the rabbis, to the Pharisees of the children of Israel, to protect the revelation, but they couldn't. They changed the word of the revelations, and now Allah is addressing them, especially them, the rabbis, the scholars of the Beni of the children of Israel. So it's specific, addressing the scholars of the rabbis of children of Israel. It's not a general statement.
Where do you see that? And admittedly, I
No,
wasn't.
it does. No, that's cool. But
Okay.
so what does that mean?
He gave responsibility. The Torah was Allah gave the Torah responsible for the rabbis, the scholars, to teach it to the people. But what they did, they gained power, they controlled the people, so they used the revelation to mistreat the people and misuse the people. So they changed words to gain benefit for themselves, and not to teach the people. That's the explanation if you go to commentary of this.
Okay, but we asked some questions regarding that. Do you have any answers regarding the questions that we asked?
Which question? Sorry, which question?
Why is it that a creator creates humans and knows in advance that they will change something? Why did he create the humans and allow them to change something? Why does, I mean, he says that the Quran, the Bible's what was revealed before, the Torah, for example, that we have to take the Injil and the Torah as guidance and as a light. How can we use the Torah and the Injil as guidance and a light when they have been falsified? But we don't get told what was falsified, in what way, from what, to what, and why. So these are the questions that we have.
Can you ask a simple question for him? I'll just give him a short question.
Okay,
Yes,
what was changed? What was changed?
It's very easy. We have now the final revelation. So that's the criteria. That's the lying detector, as you can see, is a lying detector. So if it doesn't match with the Quran, that's what has been changed in the Bible. So that it's the criteria. It separates the truth from the falsehood, from the true revelation, and from the words of man. So that's what the Quran
this is
does.
very general. Okay, what was changed in the Bible? What did the Bible say 3,000 years ago, and what was changed so that it says what it says today?
For example, what was changed? How can I say it? We have to look in the Bible, and then we can compare.
What would you compare it with, Benny? If you're going to compare the Bible, what would you compare it with?
With the Quran.
Yeah, but the Bible and the Quran.
If the Bible disagrees with the Quran, that's what's been changed. As the Bible agrees with the Quran, that means that part is still pure.
You need to speak a bit louder, Thunderous. I'll try and make you a bit louder, but when you're speaking, you're getting it's quite soft. Maybe because Benny's outside and it's.
Okay, let me go. Let me come back. I will go inside.
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, let me come back.
Okay. We can come back to because that's a general question, isn't it? I mean,
I think we might need to avoid that one, in all fairness, because that one you could get trenched in on that one about the Bible being corrupted. It'll be that, to be honest with you, that kind of question requires a show on its own right.
Yes, and of
Because
course the
there's so
Quran.
many things that you can do. There's a lot of wiggle room here. You can't really nail anybody down on this, because you would need to take a specific chapter and a specific sentence and then compare that word for word to the Quran, and it's crazy. I
And
mean, what I
lastly,
would do, for example, in the Bible, it says that Haman was in Babylon, and in the Quran it says Haman was in Egypt. Okay.
Haman was in Assyria, not in Babylon. Haman.
Well, isn't he the guy who was at the court of Xerxes?
No, he was Artaxerxes. That's in the Book of Esther.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think it was Babylon. I think it was the Assyrians, the Assyrian Empire.
Oh, I thought it was in Babylon.
Nebuchadnezzar were Babylon.
Okay, but it's 1,000 kilometers away. It doesn't matter where. So it's how does that? How do you now verify that the one is correct and the other one is not? How do you do that? You see, this is the problem.
Well, the thing is when you go to if you don't mind me saying, if you go to the biblical narrative, irrespective of whether you accept the Bible the way it is or not, the names and the locations are irrefutable. Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar, the locations are there where the Bible says they are, and the names that they mention are the names that are found in cuneiforms and other parts of archaeology. Whereas the Quran doesn't provide anything. It's very vague. It actually doesn't even give names. In fact, what name of a world ruler, non-Islamic, is given in the Quran?
No, there is none. And this is the problem, because we know all the names of all the Egyptian pharaohs and their viziers, their builders, their blah blah. So we have a lot of information on them, and nowhere does it mention the name Haman. So we know with reasonable certainty that there was no Haman ever in Egypt.
Absolutely.
But you can't really verify it. So it gets very technical after a while. So I'm confirming, because I agree with you on this. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but even, you don't have to accept the biblical narrative, but when it mentions things like Cyrus the Great or Belshazzar or Nebuchadnezzar or Darius or Pontius Pilate, for instance, or Caesar or Herod, these names are historical names. They're irrefutable. So even though you don't have to accept the Bible, but you accept the history that it comes with, whereas the Quran is vague, it's ambiguous, there's no detail. I mean, the greatest example of this will be, say, Dul Qarnayn is the closest you're going to get. But who is he?
Yeah, exactly.
Welcome in, Why So Religious as well. Good evening. How are you, my good sir?
I'm well, thank you. I hope y'all are.
Cool.
Hello.
Right, let's move on to number 60 then, unless anybody's got anything else to say on this. I think it's definitely vague, and although Stops has pointed out that it is referring to the Jews, and it's also referring to where the claim is that certain things have been corrupted in the previous books. Again, this could have been made so much clearer, but I mean, I would probably say it about every single verse, so it'll get boring. So let's move on to 60. 60, so 260, Yusuf Ali. And remember, Moses prayed for water for his people. We said, strike the rock with thy staff. Then gushed forth therefrom 12 springs. Each group knew its own place for water. So eat and drink of the sustenance provided by Allah, and do no evil nor mischief on the, I don't know why I'd say face of the earth, on the earth, face of the earth, okay. That seems to be a bit redundant. I'm not sure you need that, but on the earth. But there we go.
Okay, I don't know. Why does it say recall or remember?
I think it's trying to recall the or remind people of the biblical narrative where the nation of Israel in the 40-year trek in the wilderness.
Yeah, but we haven't been told anything about Moses praying.
No, we haven't. No, you're right. But I'm thinking this is what he's trying to, this is what I was saying last week.
Exactly. You need the Bible. You need to understand and know the contents of the Bible before this makes any sense.
Yeah. But he's already bought, remember what we were discussing last week, Muhammad bought stories. So he's only mentioning those popular stories or the more famous stories or the well-known stories. He's not mentioning the vague ones. He's mentioning the ones that the audience will already be familiar with. And this story with Moses in the water, they'd be familiar with this. Yeah. But he doesn't know the whole story. Like in the previous verse and what we were discussing last week, he's being very vague and he's getting it wrong.
And the content is ridiculous at the same time, because it says strike the rock with your staff. I mean, that is so magic, okay? That is so the magician doing stuff. Instead of God sending down, 5,000 or 2 million or whatever bottles of Perrier or something, no, he has to strike a rock with his staff. Now, can you imagine millions of people trying to drink from 12 fountains or something? And I did the maths once, and it takes roughly like just over 100 days for everyone to drink. So you don't drink for 100 days. Do you know what happens in the desert if you don't drink for 100 days? So this is stupid, this is really childlike.
I mean, you can survive, again, depending on the environment, about 7 days without water, but certainly not in the desert, very likely, especially if it's hot weather and so on.
Not 100, yeah.
A question for you guys, all of you really. What version or what sort of Bible would or access to or the biblical material would Muhammad or the Arabs have had at his life? Because clearly they wouldn't have had any of the modern Bibles they have today. So what access, would it have just been word of mouth, or was there actually some sort of text that they had access to?
There would have had access, because the Masoretes were known Jewish scroll writers. So the Jews were quite meticulous in the way that they wrote things. They numbered each letter on each sentence, for instance, to make sure that the consonants were always correct in number. So they would have had parchments and scrolls and things. Though possibly, as technology was improving, that they would have transferred from papyrus to something more durable, like a leather maybe. But you've only got to look at the Bible and the Jewish nation as a people. They were meticulous in their education. These were not stupid people. They're anything but stupid. So their access, they would have cherished what they had as well. They weren't vague or disrespectful to the religious texts that they had. They would have, they would have looked after what they had, and I dare say, no doubt, the Christian attitude would have been very much the same. But however, we are, like Stops said a moment ago, there's some several hundred miles away from, main cities and things like that. So, you can only guess, by what how as the attitude was in the cities, as to what it would have been like in more barren rural areas like a desert, where Muhammad was at this moment in time.
I think what I brought up before is this concept that, okay, so Allah is telling these people to remember these stories, but these are a bunch of Bedouins, a bunch of nomadic people who possibly never went to the only place that you really hear about Jews being populous and teaching Judaism in Arabia is Medina. Okay, now you do hear of a couple of tribes here and there, but so why would some nomadic person, a Bedouin, hear this from Allah and instantly know about this story? It doesn't make sense. A person who's never been to Medina, who's lived his whole life on an oasis, using a hawk to find rabbits in the desert and stuff, why would they know about this story? It's never made sense. Allah is coming from the position that these stories are so well known to everybody, but it's just not true at the time that he was giving it.
Absolutely, because it would have been the period of ignorance.
Can I respond? Can I respond to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Allah mentions the history of previous nations as a lesson. So he talks a lot about the children of Israel as a lesson for us, because so we don't make the same mistakes as they have made. So the Quran is not a book of stories. It's a book of lessons and reminders and history to learn from the previous nations and to not go on the same path as the previous nations.
But that still doesn't address my point, where the time that this was giving out in the 600s to a Bedouin, a person who's never been to Medina, never met a Jew in his life, doesn't know any of their stories, how does he remember this story?
Remember this. It's not about the story. It's about the lesson.
How does he remember this lesson if he's never heard this lesson before?
No, if you have, how can I explain it? If the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was how can I say, a teacher. He taught the people, so he gave them history of previous nations to give them a point. Okay, this is the mistake they did. So don't make the same mistake as the previous nation. They don't have to know. They don't have to know they don't have to know the story. They have to know the point. What's the point of this? What's the lesson? What's the wisdom? That's the point.
Here's the point, that nowhere has this story occurred yet, this lesson occurred yet inside of the Quran, but Allah is telling them to remember it as if they already know the lesson or the story.
He's addressing the children of Israel in this particular verse. You talking about this verse?
No. This here, the Quran is supposed to be addressing all people through all time. That's the point of the Quran. Is that it is to be a lesson, right, for all peoples of all time. To use your word, lesson. How are the people who have never met a Jew or know any of their stories? How is this a lesson from them if they've never and they've heard the Quran the very first time, and nothing in chapter 1 or the 59 verses of chapter 2 up to this point has ever taught them their lesson that you're talking about?
So I cannot really follow you. I cannot really
Sorry,
I cannot really follow what your point is. Sorry.
But why?
If I don't know anything,
what he means is,
then what happens if I read it? If I read this text and it says, "Remember when Moses prayed," I don't know who Moses is. I don't know whether he prayed for water. I don't know what he did. How can I remember this?
This verse. We're talking about this verse now, right? To be
Number
to
60.
follow. Okay, number 6. This verse is addressing directly the children of Israel. It's not.
So I shouldn't
It's
read
not talk. You should read it as a lesson, as a wisdom for you. But you shouldn't read it as God is talking to you. Remember. No, it's just a lesson. You have to extract the lesson of it.
But how can I learn the lesson if I can't remember what the lesson is that Moses prayed?
No, but that's not the point what Moses prayed.
This is what it says here. Why would the Quran tell me, remember when Moses prayed, when I don't remember this? Why would the Quran tell me to remember something that I have never been told?
And remember Moses prayed for what?
Benny. When Muhammad is speaking to people, he's speaking to people who do not know who Moses is, because this is the period of Jahiliyyah, the period of ignorance. So when Muhammad is telling them a story about Moses, the audience should be saying, who is Moses? We don't know who Moses is. We've never been told anything about Moses. But Muhammad is telling them verse 59. Verse 60.
Oh, no. You misunderstood me. Let me clarify. I know what you're getting. This is Allah speaking directly to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to give him a lesson of Moses. So it's directly to the Prophet. It's not really.
So just a moment ago, it was a lesson for the Jews, and now it's a lesson for Muhammad because it doesn't fit your narrative.
No. I mean, for us, of course, if a Jew reads this, he will get lesson of wisdom out of it. If I read this, I'll get. It's for. Yeah.
What?
How can you get wisdom if the Jews already have the text in the
exactly?
They've already got this lesson. They've already had it 1,500 years, 1,500 years. Well, at the time of Moses, nearly 2,000 years. They've already had the story. They don't need Muhammad to come and remind them the same story that they've had for 2,000 years.
So you're saying reminder is not good for you? If you know the stories, reminder is not good for you. We need reminders.
They don't have a reminder, buddy. That's what we're talking about. There are people. Imagine this is 600 AD. Muhammad is talking to Bedouins, a person who's lived his whole life in an oasis, and he tells them this Quran. Nothing has explained this verse to the people beforehand, and they don't know the Jewish stories. To them, they just have to accept that, oh, what Muhammad just said is absolutely 100%. Oh, but he's telling me to remember it. I don't remember it. Do you understand that?
But why so? He's
Yes.
claiming that he wasn't speaking to the Bedouins.
Yes, that
claiming-
was not
He's also claimed that it was speaking to the Jews, and then he retracted that and said that this is speaking straight to Muhammad.
Yeah.
No, in this verse, no, you cannot. Wait. Okay, just to simplify it.
Please do.
Point one, follow me. Point one, God is speaking directly to Muhammad to give him this verse.
Let him finish.
But
Let him finish.
yeah. Okay, give him this verse. This verse has been taught by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if the Bedouins don't understand who Moses and everything is, he will teach him, give him more details. You know what I mean? He'll give him more details afterwards. You know what I mean?
But he
And then-
has it in the Quran so far. And this is Allah telling them as if it's a story that they should already remember, right?
No,
That
the
is
remember is not for don't cut up on the word remember. It's not for the Bedouins. Remember.
You're the one.
It's-
Firstly, Muslims get hung up on words a lot more than non-Muslims. Okay, so let's not try to spin this on us because we are the ones who are using the text and trying to think about it critically, as opposed to, and none of us have changed our position on what this is supposed to mean, right? And none of us have said who this is addressing has changed it. You've changed who it was that this was allegedly addressing.
Okay,
Okay,
final
we're
point.
just-
Final point. If the one of the Jews read this text, it will resonate with him because it says remember. So you can see it that way. It's directly talking to the Jews from remember
And
when he
you've
said to
said that already.
Moses.
You
So
have said that.
that's
But
okay.
why so? He's not claiming that it's to the Bedouins. So if you keep claiming that, he's going to deny that. So yes, he has changed his position. I think certainly from the previous verse, here's 59. Presumably the transgressors he's talking about here are the Jews. But then suddenly in 60, he's now talking, according to Benny, is now Allah speaking to Moses. So I don't think you can accuse him. I mean, you could bring the evidence to show that in fact he is speaking to the Bedouins. But if you're going to claim that, he's just going to deny that all the time.
Well, I'm just saying, Benny on this particular verse has retracted and then said something
Yes.
different about.
Yeah,
It was
that's
this
the deal.
very verse, this very verse. At first, he said that it was to the Jews, and then he said that it was speaking to Muhammad as a reminder. So that's
Okay.
what I'm saying.
The question, Benny, is if this is the Quran and it's supposed to be correcting the errors in the Bible, why is it that the mistake in the Bible, where it's impossible to have millions of people drinking from 12 fountains, why wasn't this corrected? Why is the mistake being repeated here?
that's okay. Sorry for laughing. But okay. For my mindset is if someone created the universe, it's very easy to create water so that's my mindset.
Exactly. So why doesn't God create the water? Why does it give each tribe a drinking place? In other words, one fountain. Why doesn't it just create a swimming pool for every person? Why are there 12 sources for a couple of million people, which means that 99% of these people will die?
No, if I'm not mistaken, the water came. They had enough water, if I'm not mistaken. So it was not the problem.
There's not enough water, because if you have 12 sources and you have 2.5 million people drinking from it, it takes 100 days for every person to drink. Now, in the desert, after 100 days, 99% of the people are going to be dead.
Well, presumably stops though, just as devil's advocate, a Muslim, Benny's not necessarily claiming it, but they could say these were amazing springs that were the size of a river. And so you could have people along the banks like the Ganges, and they're all drinking this clean water. So in fact, 12 springs is more than enough to cover these people. What would be your response if they said
it doesn't do that? And I think it should correct the error and say, yeah, the Bible was wrong. The people made a mistake, and therefore it's not just 12 springs from a rock, but it's actually a huge stream that could cater for all the people. It doesn't do that. So that's why my question is, why doesn't it correct the mistake in the Quran, in the Bible, but it simply repeats it. Where you need exactly what you are doing, you need to interpret this and add your own common sense to it, because if you do the plain maths, you know it doesn't work. And this is why my question is, why didn't he correct it?
Okay, well, one thing you have to take into consideration there. From Islamic perspective, there are laws of the universe, laws of nature, what we see around us. So if you have, like you said, then you have a good point. The laws of nature, when you have 12 springs, is not enough in the desert. Then you have a good point. But there's also the supernatural laws. This is the unseen, that God is intervening into the supernatural laws. And now in this special event, God is intervened, so he supersedes the universal law with the supernatural law. So that's you have to consider that.
Yeah, I think stops
Okay,
just.
so that's the
I just think from my point of view, stops that's what they would argue. They would say, okay, striking the rock with a staff is a miracle event, and it's within the power of God to gush forth enough water to quench the thirst of 1 million people. So I'm not sure that would be, just from my, obviously just listening to what you're saying, I'm not sure that would be a strong objection from their point. Obviously, you and I would go, okay, hang on a moment. But they would go, no, this, as Benny's just said, that they would go, hey, this is a miracle event. God is powerful enough to gush enough water out of this rock to if it is a miracle, then God's done a miracle and there's enough water there. So asking the question, it could never do 1 million, they're going to claim it's a miracle and it can do 1 million. And I think
that's exactly it. And that's what we have to sort of acknowledge, and that's what we have to go to. There's no other rational explanation.
No,
that's the way.
Exactly. You can't do that. All right.
Because God would send 2 million bottles of Perrier. Easy.
Can I just interject there on this numbers thing? Because I don't know where people are getting their numbers from.
I'm taking it from the Bible.
Okay, where are you taking it from the Bible from, Stops? Because when I go to Exodus 12:37, I'm not getting the numbers that you're getting.
What are you getting?
I'm getting about 600,000 men that are, but if you double each woman for every man, so that's 1,200,000 besides little ones. So that's just talking about 1.2 million men and women.
They didn't have parents?
Sorry?
They didn't have parents?
Well, men is men. It's going to be men and...
So men don't have parents. Well, it says their families.
No, it doesn't say families. It says 600,000 men.
I took the family. I took the men and the families, and I came to 2.5 million. And I took the 2.5 million and then did the maths based on that.
No, you did. You've made up your own figures then, because that's not what the scripture says.
Okay, I don't think there's a critique of the Bible verse now.
No, but if you're going to mention figures that are not there as far as the Bible's concerned, give me the dignity of correcting, considering that's the perspective.
Well, I mean, you guys can have that argument if you want to.
You don't have the figures either, though, bro. Thunderous, you don't have the figures either.
Nobody has the figures.
It's all speculation. Can we move on to the next verse?
Yes. But point taken. Thunderous, point taken. Yes, there is no precise number. Absolutely. This is my assumption. Absolutely. I agree. Point taken. Yeah.
No, I'm cool.
Okay. 61, Yusuf Ali. And remember ye said, O Moses, we cannot endure one kind of food always. So beseech thy Lord for us to produce for us of what the earth groweth. It's pot herbs and cucumbers. It's garlic, lentils, and onions. He said, will ye exchange the better for the worse? Go ye down to any town, and ye shall find what ye want. They were covered with humiliation and misery. They drew on themselves the wrath of Allah. This because they went on rejecting the signs of Allah and slaying his messengers without just cause. This because they rebelled and went on transgressing.
Yet again, it's just another load of rubbish, because if this is happening, this will have happened during a 40-year trek. This is what he's referring to. Yes, the nation of Israel, when you look at the biblical narrative, was moaning about the food. But Moses was right up there until the promised land. So what messengers were they slaying? It's just mentioning something that happened later on during the times of the judges and the kings, later on in the history, some 1,000 years later. So he's getting two time periods with the nation of Israel confused and mixed up. He's got the nation of Israel in the 40-year track moaning about the food. Then he's got them 1,000 years later when they're slaying their own prophets. So he's got the two he's got a confusion in the time lapse.
Yeah, so you're saying there's a big jump in time here, and it's all been put together to make a person who would read this think that it's all happening, sequentially within a short period of time.
Absolutely.
So, Benny, you've heard that. What's your thought on this? Have you got a comment or?
Can you repeat it in just one sentence, please? Sorry, I was.
Yeah, Thunderous suggests, says that there's a big difference in time between when the Jews were complaining about the food in the 40-year trek and then slaying their messengers, which is in Judges and Kings. Thunderous is saying there's about 1,000-year difference. But when you read this verse here, it says nothing about that. So it appears that people were complaining about food, and then it talks about slaying the messengers, and there's no information there to explain, this big jump. It seems to have all been put together.
Yes, it put together. Sometimes Allah puts a summary of what happened together.
Do you agree? Do you
as
agree?
A lesson. It's not a story.
Yeah. Okay. But do you agree with Thunderous's view on this? That in fact the historical narrative talks about them in the 40-year trek and then 1,000 years later. So you agree that was in fact the historical thing that happened prior to the Quran?
I don't know. I have to do research.
Okay, well, let's take. I mean, Thunderous is quite well read on this. Let's assume that's the case, and this is then putting this together. How would somebody know this, though, Benny? If they're looking at this verse, how would somebody know this, or are they not supposed to know this?
I think, I think that it's irrelevant when or how when it's a. I think the point is, what's the lesson we can extract from that? That's the whole point. It's not, okay, when was this happen? Is it before or after? That's not the point. The point is they were ungrateful, and the point was they slew messengers when the messengers came to them with clear signs. They slew them. That's the two main points in this verse. So a lesson for us is, don't be ungrateful and accept the messengers.
Okay, but what messengers, though? Because you don't know what messengers they are without referring to the Bible, and those messengers then presumably came 1,000 years later. Don't you think this is important stuff to add there? Because when it says his messengers, which messengers? Who?
Allah didn't mention the name, so it's in this verse, in this kind of lesson, it's irrelevant. That's why the name is not mentioned. When something is not mentioned, it means it's not relevant. Just stick on the point, otherwise you'll be distracted from the main point. Oh, which messenger? Did he have kids? Was he married?
No, hang on,
tribe?
Benny,
you get distracted.
Benny, it would be trivially easy to add in there and slaying, I don't know, David or whoever it may have been, just, or Solomon or Saul or whoever it may have been. It would have been trivially easy to say, and his messengers, for example, Saul. Then everybody would know who they're talking about.
For example, they slew John the Baptist. He was a messenger. John the Baptist. They slew him.
Well, exactly. So why doesn't he put that in so people know who they're talking about?
I think it's not relevant for the point, for the lesson. That's what I think. That's what I think.
Well, killing prophets is quite heavy, I think.
Yeah, killing the prophets is the main point, not who or what his name is, where he came from, does he have children, blah blah blah. That's irrelevant.
Marriage and children, Benny. But you see, each prophet, when they were slaughtered by the ones that were not serving God, their circumstances is quite important, though, Benny. They a prophet didn't just appear. They said, "Oh, look, there's a prophet. Let's kill him." There's a reason why. There's a certain lesson to be learned from the person that did the killing. Okay, so you're not. This is very vague here, and I say that the only reason why names are not mentioned and the timeline is convoluted is because Muhammad didn't know what was going on. He heard two different stories, and Muhammad got confused. This is what's taking place here. Muhammad got confused. He remembered two stories, and he either deliberately joined the two stories together, or he got confused in himself. And when he was relaying it, it just came out the way that he did from the way that he remembered it. Because there are no details. Every time Muhammad gives an account, there are no details, no names, no locations, and no time periods. And there is no lesson to be learned here. Because you see, If Allah wants you to learn a lesson with all these signs he's giving, he could just say, don't do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that.
Okay,
He doesn't need,
you know.
please let me finish. He doesn't need to go, he doesn't need to go keep going to stories to people who don't actually have the stories. Because the Arabs, the pagans, they don't have these stories. So Muhammad is wasting his time telling them about stories about a bunch of people that they know nothing about. And as far as the Jews are concerned, the Jews have already got the stories.
Do you know what I learned from this? Do you know what I learned from this wisdom, from this lesson? You know what I learned from this is when Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam came to the Jews, they rejected them straight away.
Of course they rejected him because they knew.
Wait. Yeah, you're missing the. I'm not finishing my point. They reject him. So Allah is already telling the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Hey, don't. They slew messengers. Do you really think they're gonna accept you? They even killed the messengers." That's the point I'm learning from this.
Okay, let's move on because we're going to get some really good information.
Can I ask one very different question? If you're looking at this sentence, why is it that a God would take people on a 40-year journey through the desert for a trip that can be managed in 2 weeks? And then when the people complain that he's taking them on a 40-year journey, I mean, 40 years, a lot of people will have died anyway from old age. And then they complain that there's not enough food. And then he says, well, listen, just go sod off because I don't want people complaining about this. I'm leading you through the desert for 40 years on a wrong track. And now you're complaining on top of that? So what is this? What kind of a merciful God is this who says, listen, I don't care about you guys? This is not really, I don't understand. Why would you say that this God is merciful and a good God if he misleads them and then complains if they complain?
Is that a question to me?
Yes, I guess so.
From the Quranic perspective, from Islamic perspective, most of the Jews got punished and traveled around the desert and everything for 40 years because Allah commanded Moses, when Moses saved them from Pharaoh, he commanded Moses that he will bring the people to the promised land. But in the promised land, there were other warriors. There are other warriors inhabited in that land. But
and
Allah
God
said,
couldn't do anything about them. Okay.
So Allah commanded Moses, go and it's your land. I give it to you. Go take that land. But most of the Jews, they refused to go in and take the land. So Allah punished them for 40 years to travel around. So it's a punishment. It's not really.
Why didn't he leave them in slavery?
Sorry?
Why didn't he leave them in slavery if he wanted to punish them?
But he rescued them from the. It's even horrible. The slavery of Pharaoh was even horrible because Pharaoh used to kill their children. This is more horrible, and they raped their wives. So it's better to wander around 40 years in a desert than to see your children being killed and your wife being raped, I think.
Who created the Pharaoh who killed the children?
Pharaoh was going to slave burrows and raping women slaves. That's hilarious, bro. But
who created the Pharaoh who killed all the babies?
Well, raping slaves. Well, he would have made a good Muslim.
Yeah, I think we're going a bit off track here. That stops. I'm not sure.
Benny,
if
you
I
have
if
a
I
God
would, I
who
think
creates a Pharaoh. The Pharaoh kills kids, and then you have the same God rescuing people from the Pharaoh who kills the kids and then has them wander off in a waiting zone for 40 years in the desert. Okay,
yeah, but stops.
This is
stops.
your story. That's it.
Yeah,
okay.
But stops. He said it was a punishment. So he said they set them free, but they didn't want to behave themselves, and so they were punished.
So I think something that would go good with this is I'm at Q-Tafsir, and I found this interesting for all the Muslims who say you need to learn Arabic. I believe I'm screen sharing. On this part, it says it's fum. Ibn Abbas said that fum means garlic.
Yeah,
I'm not.
Put him on. No, yeah, you're screen sharing. I've got you up.
Okay. So here in the tafsir of this part, it says it's fum. Ibn Abbas said that fum means garlic, and that's what all the translations say, right? He also said that the expression fumu lana means bake for us, according to the languages of old. Ibn Jarir commented, if this is true, then fum is one of the words whose pronunciations were altered. The letter fa was replaced by the letter tha, since they are similar in sound, and Allah knows best. Others said that fum is wheat, the kind used for bread. Al-Bukhari said some of them said that fum includes all grains or seeds that are eaten. So really here, none of it means garlic. You know what I mean? Like what here you have one person, which they are going back to it for ancient Arabic, saying that it's garlic. Others said it was wheat, and Al-Bukhari labels it as all grains, you know, or seeds that are eaten. And here Muslims, this Muslim commentator right here, Ibn Jarir, he actually has to say that he doesn't know, and nobody really knows, only Allah knows, if the pronunciation of this word was changed and if it is actually the word that was used at the time. I thought that was an interesting little thing y'all might would like to see.
Yeah, it is, but I think it's a little bit deep. I mean, you're going quite deep in there now on a particular word. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we could investigate virtually every word here as well, and we'd only do one.
Well, I just think because this whole concept that Muslims are saying, oh, well, you need to learn Arabic. The Arabic that they are learning, it's not even decided if that's what was used 1400 years ago. Because there's so many different sources that are saying different meanings for different words and not even knowing if the pronunciation has changed or not. So I think that's why I brought it up, because it's very it's kind of a counterplay to all this. Oh, you need to know Arabic. Well, do you know if the Arabic that you know is actually being used correct or not? Because all these translations are saying garlic when there's Muslims who heard this for the first time, obviously didn't take that word as garlic. They took it as wheat, or they took it as seeds, or you get what I mean. So it's all about whatever they want to translate the word to now is what it allegedly is.
Yeah, and they don't have a basis for that, and it could have meant something else, or very likely meant something else at that time. Okay, well, that is a good point in that sense, because they, as you say, they're always saying go to the Arabic, and if we're not clear on what the Arabic words actually mean or what the correct meaning is, then that's problematic in and of itself.
Yeah, I just thought that was a unique little counterpoint for now on. If anybody ever wants to kind of use that, you know, I'll put that in the link, and y'all can save the save.
Cool. All right, let's move on to the next one then. 62, a little bit shorter. Yusuf Ali, those who believe in the Quran and those who follow the Jewish scriptures and the Christians and the Sabians, and any who believe in Allah and the last day and work righteousness shall have their reward with their Lord, or them shall be no fear. On them shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve.
Well, I mean, you've had this person on what, like 6 weeks ago, who were saying that the Sabians were actually Hindu polytheist, right? Don't you remember that show?
We don't know. No, we don't know who the Sabians are.
Well, that was her claim. Do you remember? Y'all had this woman on who did a presentation, and she was saying
this is one of the possibilities. Yeah.
Okay.
The interesting thing here, just going to that verse, is that Allah's not saying that the Bible is being corrupted. He's saying those who believe in the Quran and those who follow the Jewish scriptures. So the Jewish scriptures haven't been corrupted at this point, because Allah is saying those who follow it. He would say if it was corrupted that it's not worth following it. The Bible's being corrupted, or the Jewish scriptures being corrupted. Don't follow it anymore. You should be following this. He's not saying that. He's saying those who follow it, right? So, and he's saying the same thing about the Christians as the verse carries on. So here Allah is confirming the integrity of the Bible as it stands at this moment in time, as this story is being revealed.
Well, it's one of those things that Allah changes his position quite a bit about what true belief is, right? At first, to be a Muslim, to be one who submits, all it is that you have to believe in Allah and his messengers. Okay, you don't even have to know who the messengers are. You just have to believe that he sent messengers. And then he adds on later saying, then you have to believe in the day of resurrection. And then there's all these add-ons, and then you get to 49:15, and it's the only real believer is one who's never doubted and one who fights in the cause of Allah. So it's really, you take it from which part that you want to believe in it. You know what I mean? There's 7, I guess. This actually be a pretty good one. List all the times that Allah has added on to what it takes to be a Muslim, and if it adds up to 7, then you can say, oh, well, the first heaven is only believing in Allah and his messengers. And then you can just, you get what I mean? If he's changed it 7 times, I might actually look into that. I'm sorry for getting sidetracked, but that's what I read about this verse, is that it's one of those things that all you have to do is believe in Allah and his messenger, and you're guaranteed one of the 7 heavens.
It's almost as though it depends what the reaction is at the time, or how Muhammad's feeling. One minute the Bible's being corrupted, or the message. I don't think he's saying the Bible's corrupted in previous verses. I'm saying he's probably saying that the message is being corrupted, not the actual book itself, and that the book says one thing, but the Jews and the Christians are doing something different. That does stand to the testimony of time and history when you look back retrospectively. Clearly does. Not that the Bible's being corrupted, but Muhammad, being the schizophrenic guy that he is, he's getting convoluted every time. So one minute he's saying one thing, then he's saying something completely different. And this is one moment, because we're reading a verse now where 5 verses earlier, he's talking about them having a different story or a different narrative to what they've got now. So are they going to be saved or aren't they? Which one is it? Are they going to follow their own books or not?
Here's the one: isn't the transgressors change the word from that which had been given to them?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So for me personally, I don't think that he's saying that the Bible's being corrupted, or the Torah, or whatever it is that's being corrupted. I think from his perspective, it's the stories or their narrative, or the way that they're living their life, because the text is saying one thing, that their lifestyle is doing something very different, if that makes any sense. It's very much what Jesus said, to the Pharisees, that he called them hypocrites, because the law was what was said to do one thing, but their lifestyle was something completely different. And it's the same thing here.
Well, if that's the thing, like context, the word context appears in the Quran one time as being like translated, and it's 541. And this is the part how y'all were talking about they changed the words. Well, Allah doesn't say it here. He actually says that they changed the context, they changed the meanings of the word to suit their own wants and their own gains. So he's not saying that the words have actually changed inside of the Torah and Psalms and the gospel. What he's saying is that the people changed the meanings of the words when they were teaching it to people.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So this would actually fly in the face of what his previous verse said. If he's saying that they actually changed words, right, then obviously that's a lot different than changing the meaning or the context. Because as we just did, just showing you the Q tafsir of how garlic, then not one person in that source material, except for one. Only one person said that the word means garlic, and then all the other people said that it meant wheat, that it meant bake for us, that it meant all this other stuff, but they went with only what that one person said. So actually Muslims today are doing the exact same that Allah was forbidding.
Stops or Benny, do you guys want to comment on this verse at all?
Yes, I want to comment on this verse. This verse is talking about people who believe in Allah. That means believing in his oneness, believing that he has no partners, he is not 3 in 1, 1 in 3, he has no son, or he has no Holy Spirit with him. That's the Allah they believe in, and they believe in this Quran. So the verse started with they believe in this Quran. So that's the criteria. If you don't believe in this Quran, then you miss the boat. That's the first.
So let me just make sure I understand you correctly, Benny. Are you saying that to be a Muslim, you must believe in the Quran?
Muslim in this time, yes, in this time. But a Muslim is is timeless. Is not bounded by time. But in this time, you to be a Muslim, you have to believe in the Quran. Yes, if you heard about it, yes.
Okay, and anybody subsequently, right? So a Muslim today that converts, they need to believe in the Quran.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, in this time, yes.
Okay, so those Muslims that convert today that have never read the Quran, how are they Muslims then? Surely you should, by your logic, if I understand you correctly, you should be pointing out that they are in fact not Muslims. Then they first need to read the Quran, because obviously you can't believe something if you haven't read it, or if you do, I think that's irrational. So I'm sure you don't want irrational converts. So surely what you'd want to do is say, hang on a moment, you may not take the Shahada until you have read the Quran, because you need to read the Quran in order to believe it. You can't believe something you haven't read, right? So would you not think that people, if you're claiming that they have to believe the Quran today, they must have read the Quran and then believe it and then take their Shahada, correct?
I understand where you come from. I understand where you come from. If you look at that way, then I can follow you.
Is that not
But
logical?
It's more it's more complex than that. It's more complex because believing, how can I say that? There are levels to belief. There are levels. How can I say it? Level 0 is just somebody is talking about the Islam and it's appealing to you, then you accept it. That's level 0. That's level 0. So when you have level 0,
Penny,
and yes, I understand what you mean.
Yeah, okay, but you're trying to explain something here. The question
it's
I
complex.
asked, but okay. Is it complex? Because either you're a Muslim or you're not a Muslim, right? Are you claiming that there are level 0 and level 1, and are there different levels of Muslim?
Yes, Allah ranks them in the Quran too, buddy.
Look, you have to look at it that way. A Muslim, how can I say that? There are levels. You are a Muslim Muslim is level. How can I say that? To be there are levels in the beliefs. You know what I mean? If
Rob,
you accept,
it's just like he's having a hard time explaining this, Rob. It's just like in that Dawah manual. Nowhere does it say that you have to read the Quran. He just gives a list of things that you're supposed to refute people, and then even in the manual, he's saying, now are you willing to accept Islam? Now are you willing to accept the Shahada? It's because to Muslims, it doesn't matter if a person has read the book or not.
That's why. Okay, that's cool. But that's why I asked him. Benny suggested. That's why I brought this question up. He said that you have to believe in the Quran. Now, how can you believe a book that you haven't read?
That's the thing. You just have to believe that it's a sign. Ayah, what we translate for verse is actually the word ayah, which it literally translates to sign. So all you have to do is believe that the Quran is the word of God, is a sign from God. That's all you have to believe.
How would you do that, though, if you haven't read the book?
You don't have to. You don't have to read the book to believe that something is a sign from God, do you? It's just like you don't. There's plenty of people who believe that they get signs from God or miracles or whatever all the time, and probably have never even read the whole Bible or anything like that. So it's kind of like a double standard that we're playing with here.
Yeah, well, clearly it seems to be a double standard, because if you claim that a book is from something, surely the rational position is to read the book to ensure that that is the case. And does the Quran not say that you should read the Quran and ponder it? And if you haven't read it, how can you do that?
And you also have to think historically. Like right now, if I had a dream and Vishnu appeared to me and all of a sudden I started believing in Hindu, but I've never read, even though I have read various myths, I've never read the Bhagavad Gita. Hindus are not gonna judge me saying I can't be a Hindu because I haven't read the Bhagavad Gita. And same thing with Christians. If somebody has a vision of Christ, and then all of a sudden they say that they felt the Spirit and that they opened up their heart and accept Jesus as Lord and Savior, they're not going to be criticized because they haven't read the Bible by that point.
True, but then somebody wouldn't make that claim, which is why I asked Benny, because he made the claim that you need to believe in the book to be a Muslim.
No,
And
no.
But
Can I clarify this a little
yeah,
bit?
please.
The way that it works is you need three things to be a Muslim. Okay, you need to believe that there's a God, that this is the one and only God. You need to believe that there's going to be some sort of doomsday at some stage, and you need to do righteous things, and that's it.
What about
Now, everything else that comes on top of that is then reading the Quran is Sunnah. In other words, this is a very good thing for you to read the Quran and recite the Quran, because there are many, and this is why so religious comes in, many signs in it for the people to show the Muslim, to then provide the guidance for the Muslim to continue with their life. But to be a Muslim, you just need the three things. The rest is then optional.
So you don't need to believe that Muhammad is the last messenger, because that's what a Muslim said the other day to me.
No, that is an additional thing. The same thing. I mean, Khadija, for example, she was a Muslim, but there was no Quran, there was no Shahada, there was absolutely none of this. But she was a Muslim because she believed in these three things. And this is why I'm saying you need to then say the Shahada today, but you did not have to do this in those days. Today you need to do that, because today the version of Islam that we have does include Muhammad, which it didn't do in those days because he was still around.
Yeah,
So it
sure.
didn't-
So I'm
so
more
it was
interested
different.
in what happens today. So today then stops.
Today,
What,
yes.
what does a Muslim need to be a Muslim today?
Yeah, there are
No,
six,
today
six
you have
beliefs.
the factor that you have the Trinity. You have to have the Trinity of God, Quran, and Muhammad.
No. There are six beliefs to be a Muslim. To be, if
Yeah, you
look,
also have the angels and stuff. Yeah, okay, but you don't.
yeah, six.
Okay,
The
but now
one
you're
is
mixing things again.
you need to have six beliefs. That's what the first one is, believe in Allah. Second one, believe in the messengers, so Jesus, Muhammad, etc. Believe in the angels. That's 3. 4 is believe in the day of judgment, the last day. 5, believe in the revelations, the Torah, the Injil, the Quran. And 6, believe in the predestination.
These are man-made. These are man-made. You look at the Quran, and most of these, and like how I said before, you know, if you start with what just Allah says, and then count the different times that He's changed it or added on to what a Muslim is, it might actually add up to 7, because Allah does rank believers. Okay, so maybe that's the belief system, but the very first heaven would be, you know, believing in Allah and His messengers. That is in the Quran. That's one of the definitive things that you have to believe. Resurrection is another thing He adds on. Okay, and what you just did was list man-made decisions about what a Muslim is. And nowhere in the Quran does it support this action that men are allowed to determine what a Muslim is. It is up to Allah to decide what is in a person's heart and how He ranks them. It's one of these things, just like how I get into it with Muslims about scholars, right? They say, oh, well, you got to go to a scholar. You don't know if that scholar is leading people to paradise or not. Allah knows, because He's the one who bestows knowledge. So what you're doing here is trying to act like you're giving us knowledge about what Allah deems as a Muslim, but you don't know it. You don't know what Allah decides to be a Muslim, other than what He says in the Quran. And each time He says it in the Quran, it's a little bit different. Because here's the thing, by 49:15 of the Quran, you're not a Muslim, because Allah says that you have to fight in the cause of Allah to be a Muslim. So if I'm reading the Quran, which I do, and then I look at you and I say, have you ever performed jihad in the cause of Allah? You say, no. I say, there you go. There's number 7 right there. You say, oh, no, there's only 6 beliefs. I say, why can't there be 7 beliefs for what technically is a Muslim? Because I can pull up the verse that says that you have to fight in the cause of jihad.
No,
And you need to be circumcised.
No, that's not how you look at the text.
No,
This is why you're mixing things.
This is what I did. What I did was give explanation after explanation, and I can actually give Quran verses. All you can do is point to scholars that are saying that these are the 6. These are the 6.
It's in the Quran. It's in the Quran. The 6
but you don't have the
Quran.
verses, do you? I guarantee you, I have the verses. I guarantee you, I have the verses.
Let me search.
But you don't. No, that's the thing. I guarantee that I have the verses, and I don't have to search for these things, but you have to. But you don't want to listen to the verse that I said about 49:15, where you declare yourself a Muslim, but if you died right now, Allah could say to you on the day of resurrection, did you not read chapter 49 verse 15
No,
where it
that's not
says
how
that
it works. That's not how it works. It's to
of course
simplify.
it's
You're
not.
simplifying. You simplify the
It's
whole.
Allah said
No,
into
no.
185 of the Quran that he desires ease for his believers. So when I'm simplifying things, I'm actually making it to the way that Allah wants it, because he says he wants ease for his believers. You're the one who's following these people with convoluted views.
No, no, no. I follow the last messenger, and that's what he taught us.
Okay, but there is no way that we can know, for example, what is righteous. You need to believe in something and act righteously, but we don't know what is righteous.
Presumably in the Hadith stops, or no?
Yeah, but that's 300 years later. At this stage, I mean, if you look at the beginning, nobody knows. And if you look in the Hadith, what is righteous? And on the one hand, I mean, they're full of contradictions. You're allowed to rape, and you're not allowed to rape. You're allowed to hit, you're not
In
allowed
Islam,
to hit.
wait
There's a lot of
a minute.
contradictions there.
Do you say that Islam allows you to rape?
Stops now. You've gone off on a different tangent.
No.
Let's wait for that to
Nobody
come along.
believes that.
Okay, no, I'm not. We're not going to go to that now. But I'm just saying that there's a lot of things which are very contradictory in the Hadith, where we don't know what is righteous yet, and yet it says here we should act righteously without telling us what it is.
Sure, but presumably at that stage they could have, if they wanted to, go, hey, I'm going to follow Muhammad around and follow his example, and whatever he does is righteous. So they didn't need the book at that stage. All they would have to do is follow his example.
Okay, but now we're talking about the Jews. So if the Jews are the standard to follow, then we have to follow what it says in the Old Testament. And it's also full of slavery. The only righteous man in Sodom and Gomorrah who will be rescued, and when everybody else gets killed, including all the kids and everything, he goes and gets drunk every night and has sex with his daughters. And he is the only righteous person in the two cities. So is this what we need to follow? Is this what is righteous? No,
But
come on.
From Islamic perspective, the Old Testament is not pure revelation.
So how do you know what righteous is?
According to Allah, the Torah is.
But the Torah is not the
Psalms, and so is Psalms. So
what's the Torah? What's the Torah? The Christians
what
say
you just said goes against the Quran, dude.
I will make a point that you understand. I will make a point that you understand. The Christians say, the scholars say, the first five books are the books of Moses. But in those 5 books, Moses was buried and was dead, so it cannot be the.
That's the problem with your Moses. That's the problem with your Allah. That's the problem with your Allah.
That's the problem with the Old Testament. Not what.
Benny.
Oh, you're mixing things, bro. You're mixing things.
Stop reading the tracts from your Muslim scholars for dollars. That's what you've done. Everybody apart from Muslims, even some atheists I know, recognize that the likelihood is it was Joshua, because Joshua wrote the next book after the Torah, the book of Joshua, where he took the lead of the nation of Israel. He completed the book of Deuteronomy. That he completed it, and then he wrote the book of Joshua. Nobody other than Muslims comes out with this stupid, absolutely obtuse line of reasoning, because you see, the Muslim narrative is we are so desperate to discredit the Bible because the Bible contradicts the Quran at every level. Just as we're reading now, the examples that we've given now, even the Quran says Allah himself has just said to you that the Jews are following the book. He does not say that the book they're following is corrupt. Please explain that.
Also, you said Old Testament, which would apply to Psalms also. So where's your wiggle room on that? Because Allah claims that those are from him. Okay.
No, bro.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
Bro, okay.
All right,
you can have your own religion. You can have your own religion, but now you're stepping into our religion, and our religion says.
I guarantee you, I know more about your religion than you do.
No problem, bro. No problem. If you think so, okay.
I've already corrected you,
bro. You can talk. You can ask all Muslims. We don't accept the Old Testament and New Testament as pure revelation, bro.
You don't accept it.
No,
you don't accept it. Benny, answer this. You don't accept it, but does
Allah
Allah accept Psalms?
So don't mix.
Benny, you don't accept it. Benny,
Yeah.
you don't accept it, but does
We
Allah
don't accept.
accept
Islam
it?
doesn't accept it. It's
Benny,
Allah doesn't
answer
accept
my
it, bro.
question. You
Yes?
don't accept it, but does Allah accept it in the Quran
no,
as
no.
Psalms as His word?
Bro, you're missing the point.
No,
You're missing
Benny,
the point,
answer the
bro.
question and provide the verse that contradicts what I'm saying, because
No,
I
bro.
have the verse that supports it. But you tell me, you're the one saying that Muslims don't accept it. I'm not talking about what Muslims accept, because there's Muslims that don't accept what you accept, and you don't call them Muslims. You call them kafirs.
No, I don't call
Okay,
nobody
but
kafir. It's not
I'm
my
just saying.
position. It's not my job, bro. It's not my job to
So
call
here's the
somebody
point.
kafir.
You don't believe what Sufis believe. Okay? So, but they're still Muslims. They don't believe what you believe. But what I'm talking about is, what does Allah say? In the Quran, Allah says that the Torah, Psalms, and the Gospels are His words. That's exactly what He says. So whether Muslims believe it or not, that they follow it or not, is not the issue.
Bro,
The issue is, what does Allah say about it?
Bro, you're mixing the Bible with what Allah says.
Okay. We're
Allah
not getting
never
anywhere. This
speaks
is
about the
circular.
Bible. Yeah.
All right, I have to go to work, y'all. This guy.
Just post. I mean, we'll get to that, Wisa, but maybe you can post the verse in the chat, and we
Okay,
can
give
have a
me
look
one
at it
moment.
later.
I gotta
It
go to
does say
work.
so. It does
All
say
right.
so.
Thank you.
We've just read the verse, verse 62. Those who believe in the Quran are those who follow the Jewish scriptures. We've just read the word.
Yes, and it's guidance and lights and signs and everything. It doesn't matter. But at the moment, this doesn't matter. We don't need to get onto this discussion until, I don't know, some general time. Then we're talking about the differences between Bible and Quran.
Maybe we could have an evening where I address, for once and finally, this issue of the Bible's corruption. We could do it as a special show, and I'll deal with it.
That's what I like. That's it.
Okay, then you can invite somebody like Benny to come along, and you
No,
guys can have
we
a
need somebody a bit
conversation.
more educated.
Or you choose somebody if you feel like it. All right, cool. All right, let's move on then. Thanks to Wisa, he's popped off to work. So we're going to move on to 263. Yusuf Ali 263. And remember, we took your covenant and we raised above you the towering height of Mount Sinai, saying, hold firmly to what we have given you and bring ever to remembrance what is therein. Perchance ye may fear Allah. Perchance. There we go. Perchance. Yeah. Battling with the language here.
Recall what we received a pledge from you and raised the mount above you. Take what we have given you earnestly and remember what is in it, that you may attain righteousness. Different version.
Oh, okay, cool. Thoughts on this one?
No clue. I don't know what this is. Nobody knows what the mount is. Nobody knows what this is. Nobody has any idea.
I can only assume this is the point where Moses is going to get the 10 Commandments.
Let's just see here if there's anything else. Yeah, he says Sinai in brackets here, but like you say, I don't know if anybody else says that.
I've got it in brackets here as well.
Sinai.
So they're assuming it's Mount Sinai because they've had to put it in brackets. They don't know what mountain it is, but we'll assume it's Mount Sinai.
Why? We don't know. That's probably the only place they know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it doesn't say it there. It doesn't say it in the corpus. So it's only in Yusuf Ali it says it. The Pigthal's not saying it either, from what I can tell. Which is other. I just want to see if there's anybody else that says that. Anybody else? Who else is a well-known?
Okay, but here we get the same thing. Take what we have given you. Okay, this is the same sentiment that we heard in the previous sentence. What we have given you, we need to take, which is the Torah and the Injil. And then remember what is in it so that you get righteousness. This is the same story, talking to the Jews. What we have given you, remember what is good, forget what is bad. I'm now giving you a better version, but what is good in what your books say, just do it. And that's it. But we don't know what righteousness is. We don't know what any of this is. This is just waffling. This is just saying, yeah, we understand you and blah, and yes, I'm being such a good boy, and yes, we know you Jews and there's a lot of good in there, but please come to Islam now and leave behind everything. This is just begging.
And yet he doesn't know the mountain name. Yet again, this is
No, he doesn't.
he doesn't know names. He doesn't know places. He doesn't know
Yeah, exactly.
times. He doesn't know anything. It's all vague and ambiguous.
Yeah.
Benny, do you agree that he's now talking to the Jews here?
Yes, he's talking to the Jews.
Okay, so if that's the case, then I think I misspoke earlier with Stops, suggesting that they could follow Muhammad, because clearly the Jews aren't necessarily going to follow Muhammad. So how do they know what is righteous?
Because they have many prophets sent to them, like Moses and everything. They had many revelations sent to them, so they can infer from that what righteous is. They have the Torah, the laws. So if they follow the laws, the pure revelation.
But you said the Bible's been corrupted, so
I'm not talking about the Bible. I'm talking about the Torah. There's a big difference. That's what I mean. We have different definitions. If I say Torah, you're thinking about the.
No.
Now, do you step? Are we talking about Islamic perspective or Christianity perspective?
No, we're talking about the
Bible.
Bible.
Mix. Definitions change, bro. Definitions change.
No,
if I say Torah, you think about something else. That's so we cannot have really a good conversation. You know what I mean?
The Bible are the Torah. The first 5 books of the Bible.
That's your worldview. We have a different worldview. That's why it's difficult to get a point across.
It's the world to everybody apart from the Muslim point of view.
If I step into your world, then you are right. If I step into your world, then you are right. But now you are stepping in my world.
What is the Torah?
The Torah is direct revelation given to Prophet Moses only. But we can infer in our worldview. I'm not talking about Christianity worldview. If I step into Christianity worldview, then Thunderous is right. Then I'm mixing up and I'm wrong. But in my worldview, that's the Islamic worldview. If I step in my worldview, then the Torah is only given to Moses. But if I look at their Torah, Moses was buried. So that was not the original Torah given to Moses.
Okay, let me try again. What is you told me it was given to Moses, but you haven't told me what the Torah is. What is this Torah?
The Torah is wisdom and laws given to Moses. Like
okay, so we don't have this anymore today.
No, it's got. We have some resemblance. We have some resemblance of it. But we don't have it in
what
full.
Part? What? Okay, so you again, you are being very vague. You're saying, yeah, there's something that we have, and something is sort of it's resembling here and there, and a little bit of here and a little bit there. But this is nothing that we can work with. So when you say Torah, this is something that only you understand. It means it's something that we cannot grasp, we cannot work on, we cannot discuss, we cannot have a conversation about something that only you discuss, that only you understand. It doesn't work like that. So the Torah that we know is exactly the books Moses, which are attributed to Moses, which you will also find in the Old Testament. This is what the Torah is. So if you
only to Moses,
we are told that Moses was given the Pentateuch, the 5
books. That's my point.
This is what we are talking.
He was buried. He was buried and he was dead.
It doesn't matter whether he was
buried.
That's my point. This is what we are talking. This is what we are talking about when we say the Torah. We are talking about the 5 books of Moses, which we also find represented in the Old Testament of the Bible.
Bro, you're missing the. Stop! You're missing the point. You say.
I know I'm missing the point.
You're missing the book because in their 5 books, Moses was buried and was dead. So we're not talking about the same thing. Definitions change now. So we cannot really have, you know what I mean?
You don't have a definition. You are telling us there is something here, a little bit here, a little bit there, something here. We don't know.
For us, it's not relevant because we have the final.
It doesn't matter. Okay, I just wanted to know that whether you know what you're talking about, but you don't have a definition. You it's some spiritual mumbo jumbo that you.
The Torah is given to Moses, but it's not the Bible because he was buried. That's the whole point.
Okay, let's stop it. Let's go to the next one. We know now that we cannot talk.
We can't. Everybody's talking over everybody. Nobody can hear a thing.
Benny, where is the Torah now? Where is your definition? Where is
this? Said it doesn't exist.
It's not irrelevant because we have the final revelation. That's the point. It's not relevant for me.
Allah is
it's not applicable.
Allah is mentioning it. He's just mentioned it now in verse 62. So it is relevant. Where is this book now? That
he mentioned it.
Where is the book
It's
now?
not, for me, it's not relevant where it is, because I have the Quran.
When I
It's
talk
not-
to you again, when we get to Deuteronomy, I do hope that you don't mention Deuteronomy 18:18, because I will just turn around and say to you, it's not relevant.
What I mean is, the Torah in this time is not relevant. But if I was alive at the time of Moses, then it was relevant for me. Then I had to follow it. But now I'm in the time of the last messenger. So for me, it's not relevant where is it and how it got corrupted. For me, it doesn't save me. It doesn't benefit me or doesn't harm me.
Yeah, you see, the problem is, Benny, we're going to move on in a moment, but the problem is when you use the label or the word Torah, you're referring to something that nobody apart from you and some Muslims understands. So it's like me saying the word sun, and everybody thinks I'm talking about the big oval sphere that keeps the earth warm, and I'm actually talking about my child. Can you see that I'm talking about my child? Everybody else thinks I'm talking about the sun. When I start to explain about it, they go, hang on, Rob, you're not talking about that thing that keeps the earth lit up and warm. You're talking about something else. You appear to be doing the same. So you're talking about, you're using the word Torah, which everybody else understands as certain books in the Old Testament, but you're saying, no, it's not those. So where can we find some of this Torah that isn't corrupted?
You can find it in some of the teachings. You can find it in the Old Testament. Yes, you can find it. Some of the.
No, you can't. Okay, let's leave it. Let's leave it. We're not going to get anywhere.
Okay, let's move on then. 64. But ye turned back thereafter. Had it not been for the grace and mercy of Allah to you, ye had surely been amongst the lost.
Please go to 65.
Yeah.
65. And well ye knew those amongst you who transgressed in the matter of the Sabbath. We said to them, be ye apes, despised and rejected.
So this is where Allah changed a bunch of Jews who worked on the Sabbath. I think they went fishing, and Allah turned them into literal apes. He turned human beings into apes. This is the evolution. Allah creates devolution.
Do you agree with that, Benny? Is that what happened here? Did he punish these people and turn them into apes?
I don't know for sure if it's literally. I don't know for sure if it's I have to ask. I have to research and ask. I don't know for sure if it's literary, but this is talking about specific people. It's not general. It's not generalizing Jews. Oh, we hate the Jews and everything. It's about the Jews who didn't keep the commandments.
Yeah, I understand that.
This is literal. Every Muslim scholar for $1 says this is literal. Be despised, ye become apes, sulking, and I think there are other words that they use that are, I think, in the Hadith as well. This is literal, and Benny
why would
with it?
Yeah, but why would the God of Islam go and punish Jews?
Because they knew that it was the law on Sabbath, on the Saturday, that you don't work on the Saturday. That was the law in that time for the Jews only. They knew it. They knew it, and they went against it.
So
okay, we understand that. My question was, why does the God of Islam punish Jews?
To give an example. To give an example.
Okay, so you think it's okay. All right. Do you understand that human beings are a type of ape?
Not from my perspective, no.
Okay. In the real world, in biology, human beings are a type of ape. So if from a reality point of view, this sentence makes absolutely no sense. You cannot turn a human being into a human being. You cannot turn an ape into an ape. So it doesn't make sense from a contents point of view as well. So this is also a scientific error.
Can I ask you, Benny, do you think does it make you love Allah more that for somebody who just wrote a minor law working on the Sabbath, it's not murder, it's not thieving or anything like that, but breaking a minor law, that Allah turned some human beings into apes? How does that make you feel about the God you worship?
You have to take into consideration, because for me it's a lesson. You have to take in consideration that they had many.
You work on a Friday then?
No, we have different laws. We have different laws. Now we have the Sharia law, and that's different. we have to go to the mosque for 1 hour, but we can work, we can go to school, everything. So it's a relieving law.
Thunderous, he
better law.
accepts it. You can't change that.
You can
Do you
change
think
what, sir?
this punishment, this threats, this mafia tactic is something that should be that way?
You have to take in consideration that those people
How many
had-
times did Allah do this?
Hang on,
Because-
Thunderous. Let him finish, and then you answer that question.
Sorry.
What do we need to take into consideration?
You have to take in consideration. This is not talking about normal people like now. You know what I mean? Like I said before, this is a type of people had many messengers. So it was all established that they have to follow the law. It was clearly established. It's not like we now lived in a plural society, in a secular society. They lived under the Torah, the law. And to keep the harmony into that society, because many prophets came to them, they had to keep the law. Otherwise, there will be no harmony.
Okay,
And that's
well,
why Allah set an example. And sometimes you have to set an example. Otherwise, the society will dysfunction. So
Okay.
you have to look at it that way. Don't look at it in your worldview.
Okay, what is the Sabbath, Benny? What is the Sabbath?
The Sabbath is from is like when the sun goes down till when the sun comes up till the sun goes down. You don't.
That happens every day, Benny. That happens every day. What is the Sabbath?
On Saturday, when the sun goes up till the sun goes down, you don't work. You don't work. That's on the Saturday. That's
okay, so is fishing to get food to eat for that day, is that working in Allah's eyes?
In Allah's eyes, yes, it's work. If you get fishing, yes.
So if you're walking across the road and you pull some seeds up and you take a piece of fruit from a tree and you eat that fruit, that will be working in Allah's eyes on a Saturday.
I don't know.
Oh, you do, but if you can take.
Thunderous, come on.
I don't know.
Pick it to bits now.
That's not the point, bro. The point is to set an example in the society.
Exactly.
You clause on minor details.
And your God sets the example by turning human beings into apes.
If he does that, is example. Sometimes you have to set an example.
Let's move on.
Let's move on.
We need to get to 73 today.
Okay. Let's get through it. 66. So we made it an example to their own time and to their prosperity, and a lesson to those who fear Allah. So there we go. Is they're talking about exactly what Benny claims he's talking about, that when they made an example of these Jews and turned them into apes because they misbehaved on the Sabbath. Okay. 67. And remember, Moses said to his people, Allah commands that he sacrifice a heifer. Presumably a heifer is a cow, right? Yeah. They said,
young virgin.
Is that what a heifer is? A young virgin cow?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. A female, male, or does it make no difference? Well, virgin meaning. Okay, it is, right. They said, makest thou a laughing stock of us? He said, Allah save me from being an ignorant fool, in inverted commas there.
Again, we have to remember, we don't know why. Oh, goodness.
Yeah, he's saying it. He's repeating himself here. Benny, why is he repeating this so soon in these verses again?
What does he repeat? Sorry, what does he repeat? In your point of view?
Remembering.
It's just a reminder. If you say remember, is to remind people, okay, reminders is a lesson sometimes. Is most of the lesson. So it's just a lesson.
So there's no explanation. Cool.
I have to research about it.
Okay. So now not only the Hindus have a special connection to cows, so Jews as well and Muslims as well. That's why it's called this whole long monster chapter is called the cow, because there are a couple of sentences regarding cows. Ah, there you go. Exactly.
Yeah.
Can we speak? Can we just read from there right up to 73 all in one go?
We can do that. Yeah. Let's just go here. Go 73. Verse 68. They said, beseech on behalf thy Lord to make plain to us what heifer it is. He says, okay, that's like a bit odd. He says, the heifer should be neither too old nor too young, but of middling age. Now do what ye are commanded. So, but the word heifer itself, Stoff, you say is a virgin cow.
Mm.
It's a cow that has not borne a calf. Okay, cool. So it's obviously one of those, and it's also not too young and too old. 69, they said, beseech on our behalf thy Lord to make plain to us her color. He says, it's weird, a fawn-colored heifer, pure and rich in tone. A fawn-colored heifer. What colors are a fawn?
Yellow.
Presumably brown, is it?
Yellow.
Yellow. Oh, okay. Didn't know that. Pure and rich in tone, the admiration of beholders. 70, they said, beseech on behalf thy Lord to make plain to us what she is. To us are all heifers alike. We wish indeed for guidance if Allah wills. Okay, 71, he says, a heifer not trained to till the soil or water the field, sound and without blemish. They said, how hast thou brought the truth? Then they offered her in sacrifice, but not with goodwill. 72. Remember ye slew a man and fell into dispute amongst yourselves as to the crime, but Allah was to bring forth what ye did hide. Finally, 73. So we said, strike the body with a piece of the heifer. Thus Allah bringeth the dead to life and showeth you his signs. I can't pronounce this.
Chance.
Chance. May ye understand. And I think that was the special verse that I've heard Stops talk about so many times. So
I'm going to go get popcorn. I'm going to go get some popcorn, sit back and listen.
So obviously,
Did you have Deuteronomy and Numbers, by the way, Thunderous?
Do I have them to hand? Yes, I do.
Because you can choose Deuteronomy. They have the same story, okay? The same, but it's a red heifer, okay?
Where in Deuteronomy or Numbers is it?
I don't know. Come on, Jesus, am I a Bible expert? No.
This story's not
You
in
should
there.
be impressed that I know this much.
It's not in there at all. This story is not in Deuteronomy nor Numbers. It's not in the Bible. This must be taken from the, what do you call it, the Talmud. It sounds like a Talmud story. It's certainly not a biblical story.
Should I really go and find this now?
Is it important, Stops? We're trying to critique. We're trying to critique this.
No, the point is that it's taken from the Bible. It's the same story, except there it was a body that was lying in between the two cities, and they also sacrificed the same story. What is the color? What is this? And then in the end, they find a calf and they sacrifice it. And instead of slapping the corpse with a stake so that it gets up and says who is the murderer, they go and wash their hands in the blood of the cow.
Okay, but you're claiming that's in the Bible, and Thunderous is saying no, it's not. So obviously we can look at that at some point. One of you will have to bring your evidence, but we're not doing that on this show necessarily. We can do it in an after show if you really want to go there. So Benny, obviously you've heard these verses here where they're asking the different characteristics of this heifer, which is a cow that hasn't given birth yet, and then they're talking about, in particular, this last one here, where Allah bringeth the dead back to life and showeth you his signs. So you strike the body with a piece of the heifer. What have you got to say about that?
This is a lesson for me. If I read this verse, if Allah commands you something, you do it without asking too many questions. But the lesson of this, the Jews asked many questions. What kind of color it is? What kind of cow? What kind of this? What kind of that? So,
Don't you think
that's the lesson. Don't ask too many questions. Yes.
But don't you think that it is important to know which cow? If Allah is telling people that you can slaughter a cow and then bring somebody back to life, don't you think it is important to know which type of cow? Because otherwise you've got it. Or are you suggesting that Allah was talking about all cows? Because clearly, hang on a moment, but clearly when they did the questioning here, he gave them specific cows. So don't you think that it was a good thing what the Jews did here was to understand which specific sort of cow supposedly can bring somebody back to life? Because if they had not asked these questions, then people would have tried this and found it didn't work, right? So now the Jews were narrowing it down.
No, Moses, Allah commanded Moses to say to his people, to his nation, they have to sacrifice a type of cow. But there's, for example, I say a milk cow. But they took it further. They're asking ridiculous questions. So, like, okay, which kind of color, which kind of this, it's ridiculous. That's not the point. Allah says you have to slaughter a milk cow, so go ahead, slaughter a milk cow. Don't ask too much ridiculous question. That's the point, that's the lesson. Sometimes if you're asking too much ridiculous questions, you will get ridiculous, will treat it ridiculously.
No, I don't think I don't think it's ridiculous to ask for specifics or precision from the creator of the universe. But anyway, so Benny, have we got an example? Have we got any evidence that this has ever happened?
This is happened. Evidence that it ever happens. I think there's some resemblance, like Stop says, some resemblance in the Bible.
No, sorry, Benny. What I mean is
yes.
there evidence that somebody has been able to accomplish this feat that Allah is talking about here? Has somebody been able to do this that we can demonstrate? Or that there's any historical evidence for even?
I don't know.
Do you believe it's possible?
Well, yeah, obviously they're going to claim you can. It's Benny, would this be a miracle or would this just be something that could happen?
Oh, bringing somebody back from the dead, you mean?
Yeah, with hitting the body with a piece of steak, or as it stops to say, or a part of the.
This was the miracle from the eyes. You have to recognize this. In the past there were miracles from the eyes to see, but now we are living in a time we cannot see that. We were not present. So, but the Quran is a miracle of the ears, and that is more relevant for us than the miracles that Moses did. Moses did miracles of the eyes to see, but that's not relevant for us because we're not present. But the Quran, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, has a miracle of the ears, and that is relevant to us today. So that's the claim from our perspective.
Yeah, but presumably this actually happened, or is this talking?
Yes,
about
it's actually happened. Yes, but we cannot verify it. No, we cannot verify it. We were not present. You have to.
Was Muhammad not present either? So nobody was present at this.
Yes, he was not present. He received revelation from Allah that this happened. So it's a revelation from the unseen.
Okay, so presumably you claim this is a miracle, right? This isn't something that we can do today or that people could have done at that stage by following the exact example that's given here, right?
No, it's just a miracle. Like I said before, there are two types of laws. There's a universal law, like we are witness today, but there's also the supernatural law that supersedes the normal laws. So when Allah, the creator of the universe, get involved, then the normal laws you see doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, so obviously that's a miracle type thing. Don't you think, though, for people like us who are investigating this critically, as many Muslims claim that we should do according to the Quran, I'm sure we'll get to that verse, don't you think that if this in fact happened, because you are claiming a miracle that nobody saw or heard, don't you think it would have been more appealing to people like us if in fact we could look back in the historical record and find the case where somebody witnessed? Well, that wouldn't be enough evidence, but at least there was a witness, there was a person's name, where this happened, etc. Don't you think that would be important things?
I think if you go ask the traditions of the Jews, then they will go more in depth with you what happened in the past.
Why would I go to the Jews though? Because this is a miracle you claiming happened in the Quran.
Yes, but it's a miracle for the eyes to see. You know what I mean? So it's not really, how can I explain that? The tradition, thunderers can maybe explain that they have traditions in the past, especially the Jews, when, for example, when they committed a murder and you don't know who the murderer is, then you have to do some type of sacrifice, and Allah, of course, will intercede, and it will tell you who the murderer is.
Right, can I just intercede that, because I'm going to partially agree with Benny and partially agree with Stops at the same time. Right, I thought when Stops mentioned about this is in the Bible, that somehow in the Bible we had a talking cow that could find out who the murderer is. That's not what the situation was. When you go to the biblical, now I know, I was thinking about it, what was he on about? Now I know. What it was in the nation of Israel, if they came across the dead body of a man, they offered up a sacrifice for the sake of the dead man, because they wouldn't know if he was murdered or if it was natural causes and whatnot. And the washing of the hands was symbolic of them, whoever was in the local vicinity of that, and the priest say, we had nothing to do with this.
That's just that's what I said. Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought you were on about that somehow, that this story was like the Bible also had a talking cow or a resurrected talking cow.
No. I said it was copied from the Bible and then changed from washing hands to slapping it with a piece of steak.
In that sense, I've misunderstood you. I stand corrected and I apologize. Benny,
great stuff. Thanks. Good to agree.
And Benny has partially got it right, but Muhammad has got it wrong yet again. Muhammad's got a story from the Jews and totally butchered it.
Yeah,
and
that's
came
the
up with
point.
something new. Yeah, absolutely. I stand corrected. But that's okay.
Okay, so Benny, you've heard the claim that in fact there was a ritual that happened in the Bible, and what's claimed here is a sort of bastardized representation of what the Bible said, but here instead of them washing their hands and offering penance, etc., and doing a sacrifice, here it was killing the cow and then using part of the cow, a piece of this cow, to bring somebody back to life.
So it's all about authority. Who's the authority? Is your Bible the authority? Is it really the revelation of the creator of the universe and everything that exists? Or is the Quran the authority, the ultimate authority? That's end of the day. That's what is down to. Who's the authority? Is the creator of the heavens and earth? Is the Bible comes from him or the Quran? So that's end of the day.
Yeah, okay. Obviously, you're going to have your view on the Quran, and Thunderous can have his view on the Bible. What I'm asking you, though, is do you agree that the story was taken from the Bible, and presumably, in your view, it's been corrected because the way Thunderous explained it is not the same as what it is here? So do you firstly agree that it's the same narrative that was taken from the Bible? Number one, do you agree that that's the same thing that they're referring to here?
Maybe it's the same narrative, maybe. But the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it doesn't work like that. He just receives revelation and he follows revelation. That's it. He doesn't look at the Bible. Oh, what does the Bible say? You know what I mean? So he just follow revelation, and that's it.
Okay, but hang on a moment. If he's just following revelation, then obviously the Quran talks about Moses, and it talks about many of the biblical figures as well, right?
Yes, from the previous revelations. Yes.
So is that not happening in this case then?
What do you mean what happening in this case? Maybe they changed the interpretation, or they changed the meaning, or maybe they changed some words, changed the event. You know what I mean? We don't. It's all about.
It's quite a big change, though, isn't it? From washing your hands and sacrificing an animal because somebody was killed, to slaughtering an animal and using a piece of that animal then supposedly bring somebody back to life. That's a very big change. That's not like a small thing where you only wash one hand in the blood and you scratch your head with the other hand. That would be a small change, maybe. This is a very big thing.
For me, it doesn't matter if it's big or small. For me, it's what's the authority of this revelation? If the authority of this revelation is the creator of the heavens and earth, then you follow that authority.
Yeah, so you are obviously believing the Quran. Then whatever the Quran says is true. You don't
Yes.
look to see if you can falsify the Quran or whether something else might be more accurate. You just accept the Quran, right?
If the Bible, look, if the Bible has authority, if the Bible is pure revelation from the creator of heavens and earth, that means the Quran is false. Yes.
Yes, but what I'm asking you is you don't look into these things. So if the Bible is more historically correct and it could be verified that the Bible is more historically correct than the Quran, and the Quran is trying to correct the Bible, but the Bible is more historically correct, you are not looking into whether this is the case. You are just accepting whatever the Quran says because you believe it came from Allah, right?
Yes, of course, because this is end of the day. Historians, I'm not gonna. Historians are not going to accept that somebody came back from the dead. You know what I mean? Or a miracle. Historians doesn't accept miracles. So end of the day, is not you don't to look at historians is not a good point of view. You know what I mean? End of the day is the unseen, is revelation, because it's a miracle.
Can I ask a different story? A
Please
different
go ahead,
question?
Stops. Yeah.
If you read this sentence in number 73, who is telling the story?
73. What does 73 say? Let me see if I can read it. It's small on the picture. Can you read it?
Yeah, I'll read it again. So we said, strike the body, in brackets, with a piece of the heifer, in brackets. Thus Allah bringeth the dead to life and showeth you his signs. Penance ye may
Perchance.
understand. Perchance. Perchance. Okay, there we go.
So who is
yeah,
saying this?
Allah is saying this.
Okay. In the sentence in 73, if this is being said by Allah, who's the Allah in the sentence?
So we said, strike this the part of it. So let's bring the dead. Yeah, Allah is saying that, and we said, strike the. So does Allah bring the?
Can you see it there? Oh, sorry. Sorry, I apologize. I clicked it off there. Apologies. There we go.
Part of it. So we said, strike him with a part of it.
So Allah said, strike the body with a piece of the heifer. Thus Allah brings the dead back to life. So Allah said,
Who? Allah says Allah. Which Allah is whom? Which Allah is doing what here? How many Allahs do we have?
So we said, strike him with a part of it. So we said, strike him. So Allah commanded Prophet Moses to strike him to tell to the people. So it's going from Allah to Moses, from Moses to his people. And so Moses is telling to his people. So you have to see it that way.
So Moses is writing the Quran.
No. Look, Allah is telling Moses directly. Moses is telling to his people, and he's narrating what Allah says to Moses.
So you are telling me that Moses wrote a part of the Quran?
No, this is direct. This is direct revelation. What happened in the past with Moses? You know what I mean?
You are saying we said. We is Allah.
Yes.
Strike him with a part of it. Okay, so this is Allah speaking to Moses.
Directly, yes.
Okay, and now, like, this revives Allah the dead. Now this is Moses talking to Allah.
Now, like, this is just in this sentence. If I'm not mistaken, then Allah just explains himself. You know what I mean?
So is this Allah talking?
It goes from directly to Moses to the first person. It switches. This is how the Quran works. It switches from first person to third person, from third person.
Who is the third person?
So when he says, say, yeah, you have to give me an example. Like this example, it's talking directly to Moses, and then Allah is explaining himself what he the
How can
conclusion
a
of
God say like this? A God revives the dead. Is he? Which God is he talking about?
no, he's explaining the situation. So he's saying how this is how Allah. So Moses is
He
telling
doesn't
to the
say this is how I do this. He says some
no,
other God is doing this.
because Moses is saying to his people,
Yeah, but now you're
no,
saying Moses is writing the Quran.
no, he's saying what Moses have said to the people. This is a revelation
But
directly
it
from
doesn't say so.
Moses.
It doesn't say Moses says that I revive the dead.
No, he doesn't have to say, because this is a revelation to Moses, to his
Okay.
people. So
Okay. So
there
he
are
says,
many
like
parts
this,
in
I
this.
revive the dead.
Sorry?
It says, this is how I revive the dead. These are my signs.
With a part of it, like this revives Allah the dead. It says this does
Which
Allah
Allah?
bring. You know, it switches. It switches.
From one Allah to the next. So which is the other
No,
Allah?
it switches from Allah to the messenger Moses, and Moses is talking to his people.
Where is Moses
Switch.
here? Okay, where is Moses?
So we said, strike him with a part of it.
Where is Moses?
Okay, this is in the context of Moses and his people. So
Okay,
that's how
but it
we
says
refer.
here, Allah revives the dead.
Yes.
If Allah says Allah revives the dead, this God must be talking about another God.
No, that's not how you see that. You have to see it in how.
Okay, why doesn't it simply say, look, this is how I do it. This is how I roll here. This is what I do. Wouldn't that be easier?
Because it's a revelation. It's
It
talking
doesn't matter
about.
what you call it. It doesn't matter what you label it. It's atrocious. It's really bad.
No, maybe the if you read it if you read it in Arabic, maybe it makes more sense. You know what I mean? If you translate
No, it
some
doesn't
word,
make any more sense if you read it in Arabic. It still says this is how Allah revives the dead.
it's okay. I cannot really strike them.
Okay, but would it make sense if this
Yes.
sentence would say, like this, I revive the dead and show you my signs? Would that be better?
I don't know.
Okay, I
know.
rest my case. Thank you.
No, but it's too you're focusing on things that are not really important. You have to focus
Well,
on.
for me, it's very important how many gods there are in the Quran. Sorry.
No. That's not what it says. No. That's too simple. That's too simple.
Well, this goes on because I've said this so many times, because it says in the Quran, it's the best of creators, it's the best of the cheaters, it's the best of this. So there are many gods, many Allahs in the Quran, and this is just one example where it says, this is how God brings things to life. And this is said by a God. And if a God says a God brings it to life, we must have two gods minimum.
You have to understand, it switches from. This is a revelation.
It's not my fault. I did not write this.
No,
If I would
no.
write it, I would do a much better job, let me tell you.
You see it very. It's too. I don't know. No, if you read the text, this is not what it says. What you say, that Allah and everything. No. That's not what I see. I see it very differently.
Let's just have a look here then. So here it is in, so we said, so you agree this is Allah, right? So if we replace that with Allah, right? Allah said, strike the body, strike with a piece of the heifer. Thus Allah bringeth. So here suddenly it's like somebody else is speaking here. This is not the same person here. If we just put that there, just make it different there. Allah said, strike the body. Okay, so there's the command. So Allah's giving a command to somebody. He doesn't say who. Again, like Stop says, it, Allah said, "O Moses, I say unto ye, strike the body with a piece of the heifer." Do you think that would be clearer so that everybody would know that he's speaking to Moses? O Moses, I say unto you. That's all we need to add there. So I'm improving the Quran now. There we go. I'm doing it live in front of you. Oops. Spelling. Does that make it clearer than it was before, Benny?
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
I'm asking you, does my improvement here make that clearer than it was before? So I've actually done this as well. So let me put that in red as well.
You cannot change the words in the Quran.
I've improved the Quran. Would you agree that it's now more accurate than it was before?
No. I cannot.
Is it less? Okay,
You want
Benny,
me to say?
Benny, I'm just asking you, is it
Yes.
more or is it less accurate than it was before?
No, because no. You cannot just change words and to say, oh, it's more better or this better. This is not how it works. This is not.
But the Christian did it in the Injil, right?
What? Sorry, the rabbis and the Pharisees did it, not the layman.
So the Jews,
It's different.
the Jews changed.
No, not the
Torah.
layman. Not the layman. The scholars,
Okay,
the
scholars
knowledgeable.
changed. Okay, are scholars human beings?
Yes.
Okay, so human beings changed the Torah.
Human beings is too general. It's too general. You have to give it a label. You know what I mean?
No, I don't know what you mean.
The scholars change. That's different. A layman has no
So
knowledge.
scholars change something, and now
Yes,
you've seen
it's better.
Rob change something.
But Rob is not a scholar. That's the big
So
difference.
if he's a scholar, then he's allowed to change the Quran?
No, he's not allowed to change. He's allowed to explain the Quran. But
Well, he's just explained it and made it a lot better.
He changed the Quran. He's changed the Quran.
But
It's
Allah
different.
says this is a book made clear, easy to understand. So we don't need scholars to help us understand the very clear words of Allah, because Allah himself said, this is a book made clear. This is a book easy to understand. This is a book full of guidance and admonition. So please help me. Why do I need a scholar to help me understand Allah's words?
Because do you really think if you for example read a science book, for example, and do you really think you will understand everything that the science book talks about?
This isn't a science book. This is a message from God to mankind. This is not a science book.
Yeah, but the message from mankind needs deep reflection. It's not like reading and thinking, oh, I get it.
Yeah, but it doesn't need a person to help you understand. When Allah himself said, this is a book made clear, this is a book easy. Allah does not say, this is a book you need other people to help you understand.
He says in the Quran, if you don't understand, go to the people of knowledge. And
why did you say
that? I can give you the verse. I can give you the verse. But you have to understand. The foundation is very easy to understand. The foundation that God is one, that Prophet Muhammad is the last messenger, and everything. That's the foundation. But the details sometimes you need scholars and some people of knowledge, people of learning. You need help from. But the foundation for guidance is easy to understand. If you want to know how to be saved and to have salvation, it's easier to understand. But to get greedy and needy with the details, you need some backup for that.
But Allah doesn't say that. Allah says, this is a book made clear. This is a book easy to understand. He does not say some of it is easy to understand, but the more deeper things you have to go to a scholar.
He says that. He clarifies that.
Can you show me that part, please?
Do we have the? I think we don't have the time to. If I look for it, maybe other time I will bring it back. We'll
I look
give it
forward
to
to
you.
We can always go into an after show after this. So I just wanted to check in with you just so that we're clear here as we finish this off, or we come to the end of this now. Benny, are you suggesting can you see clearly on your screen there now?
Yes, I can see it clearly.
Are so you disagree that what I've put in red there makes this verse clearer? So either I make it clearer or I make it worse. What have I done by adding those red words in there?
It doesn't work for us. It doesn't work like that for us, for Muslims. You know what I mean? The Quran is it's not like a normal book. You can change words and say, you cannot, how can I say that? If you talk to a Muslim, you cannot represent it like this. It's a disrespect.
But the question,
it's a disrespect.
I understand,
you know what I mean?
Benny, I understand.
It's sensitive. It's sensitive.
Yeah, well, of course it's sensitive. Benny, I understand that by your view, I can't do this. I'm just asking, if you took a step backwards for a moment and you just looked at this, either I have made this more accurate or less accurate, or I could have made it the same. I don't think I could make it the same, really. It's to me, it seems to be it's a logical dichotomy. Either I've made this more accurate or less accurate. So if you stood back for a moment, which of those two have I done here?
For me, it's the same. For me, it's the same.
So this is the same.
For me, it's the same. The verse and the point that Allah makes is the same. It doesn't change the point. It doesn't change the, you know what I mean? It doesn't change the lesson. The lesson is you have to extract from this that Allah brings the dead to life. That's the lesson. That's the point you have to focus on.
The problem
That's the main point. He brings the dead back to life. That's the main point you have to focus on.
What Stops brought up was that it appeared when you read this version here, which is the version taken directly from Yusuf Ali, when you read that, it seems to suggest that Allah is speaking about some other God here. When we read it over here, and I put these words in red, then it makes sense. But when you read it here, this does not make sense.
No, because the first sentence, it stops with a look. So we said, strike the body with a piece of the heifer. Dot. It's a dot. Now it goes on to a next verse, and the next verse is it's changing. That's how the Quran works. You can ask all Muslims. The verses. The switch changes. It's not like a normal textbook or a storybook you read. No, that's why it's unique. It's very unique in its style.
Yes,
it's changed.
Well, Benny,
you know what I mean?
I do agree that it's uniquely confusing. That is true. It's one of the most uniquely confusing books that I think one can possibly have, especially, Benny, if this is supposed to be for all people for all time. In other words, if you accept that this is an English translation, the difference between this and this, I think any rational person, and I think maybe you've decided not to use your rationality at this moment, would make it much clearer than this version.
You know, the point is that the Quran is not in English. You know what I mean? So if you can bring it in, then you have a good point. Let me give you a right direction for next time. If you bring it in Arabic and it's still confusing and you can bring it better in Arabic, then you have a solid point.
Let's do it next time. Click on roots.
Yeah, let's do it in Arabic. Then you have a solid point.
Okay.
Because the original Quran is in Arabic. If you translate it in English, it will...
and click on roots.
Okay, 1 second.
But I'm not really a scholar in Arabic, so that's the other thing.
Well, you shouldn't have to be. I think God is talking to everybody and not only to native Arab speakers, especially since it's a dead language from 1,000 years ago, which doesn't really exist anymore. So, it's very unfair to come up with this idea that we should be learning Arabic. That's really a bad argument, okay? So if a God only speaks one language, I don't think that this God should be writing books.
No, that's not what I mean, that he speaks only one language. The point is the revelation it's in original in Arabic. So if you want to know the real meaning of it, then you have to look at the original
So Allah
language.
can't make this in English?
No, if you translate it in English, it's good enough for you for the foundation. You know what I mean?
Not me.
It's
God.
good enough.
Why doesn't
okay,
God
okay,
give me
for
this
us.
in English?
Okay, if he gives you, okay, if you translate, okay, if he gives you in English, then Chinese people would say, why doesn't he give it in Chinese? And if he give it, so it's
What does Quran 14:4
excuse. That's excuse, bro.
Okay.
Benny, on the
Look
subject
here,
of
this is the Arabic.
Thunderous, hang on 1 second. Let's just do this. Yep. Okay, so here's the Arabic. Where do you want me to go, Stops?
Down to God, to the second part. Like this, Allah, stop.
There?
There.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go 1 centimeter up, this is like this. So you see,
This, yeah.
this is
yes.
in Arabic. Like
Yes.
this revives Allah. And this is in Arabic. So what more do you want?
So just explain that a bit better for the rest of our Stops.
Okay, because what Benny says is we need to read this in Arabic, and it needs to be just as confusing in Arabic as it is in English. And the point that I'm making here, that in Arabic, it's even more confusing, because it says here, like this revives Allah. Okay, it doesn't say like, it just says this, like what? Well, you have to go to the previous sentence. You have to look at the context. So if a God needs context, it's not really a God. So we have to know that it strike him with a part of it is this. So this striking the body with a part of it is how Allah revives. And it says like this revives Allah with a part of it. So there is like this, like it. There's a lot of stuff here going on without any kind of explanation, where a God should actually, I mean, I could easily improve this by, because it should be saying it like this. In other words, the slapping of a corpse with a piece of a cow will revive a person temporarily who is dead to, I don't know, to assert or to confess or to tell us who the murderer is. That's what it should be. Now, if I'm doing this in my words, in English, I am making a lot more sense. And in Arabic, it's really confusing because you don't know. So we said, strike him with a piece of it, and like this revives Allah the dead. That's it. So where is it less confusing?
Okay, so I suppose Stops, Arabs might understand that better than English people, I guess. It would be a response. So somebody who's Arabic would go, hey, I understand this perfectly. The fact that it seems a little bit backwards to you is just the translation. But when I read this in Arabic, I understand it exactly as the translator would if I had to explain it to you.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
This is why it says like this, God revives it. But if a God says this is the same thing what we had in paragraph 1, sentence number 1, where it says in the name of Allah. So if a God says in the name of a God, it means there is a second God somewhere.
And presumably Muslims like Benny will say, no, that's just the way the Quran is written, right? Or something to that.
Exactly.
No, because in the name. Sorry, I'm walking outside now. Maybe you'll hear some noise. But when we start reading the Quran, we always say in the name of Allah, because we are. How you say that? We are using the words of Allah. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's not our
Benny,
words.
We know what I mean. It's just logically wrong.
Yeah, but Benny, the issue is that the Quran is dictated to Muhammad. So what Stops his point is that Allah is talking about Allah, which doesn't make sense.
No. So that's what. Sometimes it's talking in first person. Okay, then it switches to third person. Then Muhammad is talking. It is a unique style because it's going from first to third person. Muhammad is speaking, and then Allah is speaking, is taking over the moment. So you have to.
That's not the problem. That's not what we're talking about.
That's the logical explanation.
No, we're talking about something else.
if Muhammad is speaking, then of course he will say Allah brings back the dead to life. You know what I mean? Because Muhammad
No.
is speaking to his people, or Moses is speaking to his people. So it gives
Okay, I
you a
think we need
picture
to
of.
leave this because this will never end.
Okay.
I think the fact alone that you find something like this in the Quran shows that it cannot be taken seriously. You cannot take anything from the Quran and say, yes, this is made for the rational person. It gives you rational arguments. It's reasoning with a person with intelligence. And these are the things that you need to believe in order to go and worship this God. There is nothing here in the form of guidance. This is just showing off. Look what I can do. I can revive a dead person. But in actual fact, it's laughable. This is comical. That's why I'm always making fun of this. Because there's nothing serious here. There's nothing that I can gain here. There is nothing in this where I would say, wow, this is a powerful God. I need to worship this God. All I do here is laugh.
I think I will worship a God who can bring the dead back to life. That's the whole powerful point, I think.
Miraculous evidence that it.
Why would a God who can bring a person back to life require it be slapped with a piece of steak? Please.
That's how we. That's the. Okay. For me, it's not relevant. For me, it's not relevant. You know what I mean? I'm not.
I know what you mean, but
that's not the point of the whole verse. The whole point of the verse is that's for us Muslims. If we read this verse, the whole point is that God is capable of bringing back dead people to life. That's the whole point. And on the day of the resurrection, the last day, the day of judgment, everybody will be brought back to life. That's a reminder.
But Moses is already alive in heaven, though. Moses was alive in heaven with Jesus, with Abraham and Noah when Muhammad flew to heaven. They're already alive. So they're not going to get a resurrection because they're already resurrected. Benny, are you still there? I'm talking to you.
Oh, sorry, you're talking to me. Okay, yeah, sorry.
You said that everybody will get a resurrection on the day of judgment, but
yes,
Moses, Abraham, Noah, Jesus, they're already in heaven. They're resurrected already because Muhammad met them when he went to heaven to get the prayer.
Okay, I can respond to that. Before the day of judgment, Allah will destroy everything that exists. He will destroy every mankind. He will destroy the universe. He will destroy the angels. He will destroy everything. And then when he's all alone, like when he was originally alone at the beginning, then he will bring back everybody back to life. That's okay. From Islamic perspective.
Okay, I want to go back to my original question. When Adam was on earth, what language did Allah give him to speak?
I don't know. We don't know.
What language did Adam's children speak?
We don't know.
Where did all the languages come from, Benny? All the languages today
come from the creator of the heavens and earth.
God gave mankind all these languages, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Originally.
Why did he give mankind all these languages?
Sorry, can you repeat? I cannot really hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Why did Allah give mankind all these languages?
Why did what? Sorry, I cannot really hear you.
Okay. Why did Allah give all these languages?
Maybe wait. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, there's no point in walking outside. Stops. Have you got the hadith of the day ready? He has to get somewhere else. We can go into an after show because I'm not sure where we're going to go with this. But
Well, where was going to go was, why do we have to read it in Arabic if Allah was the one that created all the languages? He gave mankind all these languages in the first place, and he wants us to go to the one language to understand his word, which maybe only 0.2% of the planet read.
Good point. I've always asked that question myself. And either the English translation is not just sufficient but excellent, because he knew what was going to happen, and I think, made it more accurate and clearer here, or it's not. And if it's not, then we have reason to suspect that people
You've just produced a surah like it. In fact, you've excelled on the surah that already exists. You've produced a surah like it.
Yeah, slightly better, I would suggest. Certainly more clear, more accurate.
You're my God now.
Good thing is, even if I
Can you hear
wasn't,
me now?
Yeah,
Can you hear me
man.
now? Sorry. You can hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
So what was the, sorry, I was outside, sorry.
It doesn't
What was the
matter. When you listen to the show, you can hear my question, and maybe you can answer it next week.
Okay, no problem.
all right, I think what we're going to do is go to the Hadith of the day and call it an evening. We can go to an after show for those who wish to join. So if you are in the chat, or if you're a viewer and you'd like to join in and have a conversation with Benny or some of us, whoever is going to stay, or just continue the conversation, then you're more than welcome. So just put a 1 into the chat. If I don't see any ones, then I'll assume nobody wants to come to an after show, in which case we'll close the broadcast. Stops, I'm going to hand over to you now for Hadith of the day.
Okay. This one is by Ibn Masud, and he says, the Messenger of Allah stood among us and said, one thing does not infect another. So a Bedouin said, oh, Messenger of Allah, if a camel gets manji glands, now manji, I had to look this up, I really didn't know, this is scabies. So this is like a skin disease. So if a camel gets manji glands and we leave it at the resting place of camels, then all the camels get mange, right? And Messenger of Allah said, who caused the first to get mange? There is no adwa nor safa, the cause. Allah created every soul, so he wrote its life, its provision, and its afflictions. So he thinks, no, doesn't infect. And this is Al-Tirmidhi 462143. This is a scientific error. So Muhammad has no clue what is going on. He claims that all diseases are just afflictions from Allah and are predetermined. He believes diseases do not spread from one individual to another. Now, if you look up this sarcoptic mange, also known as canine scabies, for example, it's highly contagious. So Muhammad is talking absolute nonsense here.
Yes, I think, as you pointed out, the science shows us that, of course, you can get infections and contagions. Infections is airborne, contagions is by contact. So that is incorrect, is it not? Brilliant. Guys, thank you so much. Let me stop presenting the screen there. I think my correction to the Quran will stay there for eternity, if there is such a thing. I do want to thank the panelists. Why so?
Yeah, everybody click like, please, come on.
Please do like the show. That'll help us to know that you enjoy going through the Quran like this. This will be the only opportunity where you'll hear from different points of view here. Some more knowledgeable than others. I'm certainly not the most knowledgeable here, so I'm listening with interest to the different to show the link in for those that want to come and join us. And we will be back again next Friday at 8 p.m. where we will continue from verse 74. So thank you to Stops, Thunderous, Benny, and Why So Religious. And we'll see you again next Friday. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Yes. Good night.
Nighty
Thank
night,
you.
sleep tight.